Okay.
I will get it for you. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue.
We set to go, guys? Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Wareham School Committee. It's September 21st, approximately 7 p.m. First on the agenda is public participation. Is there anybody who would like to speak to the committee? Seeing none, I'll move on to good news. Dr. Rabinovich.
Yes. First piece of good news is during this week, Mrs. Roteller and I had the pleasure of doing walkthroughs with our principals at Wareham High School, Minot Forest, and the Deaconess Elementary Schools. And we saw a lot of very active participation from our students and some very good teaching from our instructors. So it was a very good experience, and this is something that we're doing this year. We're going through each school every month, both of us with the principal, and there are 7 buildings, so that's 7 days out of the week. We spend about 3 hours at the building going through classrooms, and then we sit with the administration at the school and talk about what we have seen and what comments should be shared with staff. So that was a very good experience for us. And during today's walkthrough at the Deaconess School, we witnessed a Skype session going on between the Wareham Public Schools 3rd grade classroom of Heidi Sims and a Cape Verdean classroom. And so that Sister City project is continuing. The Skyping session was live today. In fact, the teacher in Cape Verde was one of the gentlemen who came and visited Wareham before. His first name, I believe, was Africanus. And so that was very nice to see. And so that's an ongoing project that is happening.
How good was the reception?
Actually, quite good. We could see the classroom. They could see us. That was very clear. We did lose power in Cape Verde at one point, and so we lost the connection. But we were in the room for a good 10 minutes, and it had been going on for a while. So they had some good communication. Because this is Peace Week, that was the conversation. The students in Cape Verde and the students in Wareham shared with each other what peace meant to them. And it was a very meaningful time. So I wanted to share that with the committee. I also, today, one of our secretaries brought this to me. We had a motivational speaker here at the high school, a Mark Manella, recognized motivational speaker, who came in to talk to our 9th grade students. The gentleman called the superintendent's office and wanted us to know that this was the best group of students that he has presented to in 30 years. Best behaved, respectful, polite group of young people. They were awesome, and he was also very pleased with the reception he received from the principal, Principal Palladino, and Assistant Principal Debbie Freitas. So that's nice to have that kind of news where it's unsolicited. Somebody just calls and is willing to share. So that was great news. That's the good news from the superintendent.
Great. Mr. Fonts?
All set, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Sylvia?
I'm all set.
Mrs. Bugan?
I have I think there are pieces of good news. That just a reminder that the drive for school supplies, Wareham to Santa Cruz, is still going on. To please make sure, if you have an opportunity to buy some supplies, drop it off at any one of the Wareham Public Schools or the Wareham Town Hall. They do need things like backpacks and pencils, tape. This is just a great program that's going on right now, and there is a huge need in Santa Cruz. It's like Dr. Rabinovich was saying, we have an amazing partnership. So just want to encourage everyone again to please support this effort, and if you can, to get some supplies and drop it off. The second piece of good news, I don't know if everyone is aware, they've been doing some great publicity, but Gateway Youth Hockey is offering free Learn to Skate programs at Tabor Academy for children under 6 years of age. If there is, I know that we looked into it last year and it was very expensive for us, and that's the reason why we didn't do it. So for Gateway Youth Hockey to get this grant and to offer this is a great opportunity to get kids involved in youth hockey. So it's again through Gateway Youth Hockey. You can go to their website. I think it starts next week or the week after. It's on Sundays and Tuesdays. And again, it's free for players 6 and under. 7 and up is only $35.
Great deal.
The only other thing is that I attended one of the PTA meetings. Another reminder for parents to please get involved in the PTA or the school councils at each one of your schools. Every school has, besides the high school, except for the high school, has PTAs. They are in desperate need of people to join and to help out. It's not a huge commitment if there are many parents that do get involved. Most of the meetings meet monthly. So if you do want more information on how to get involved in your PTA, please visit the Wareham Public School website and click on your school and find out when their meetings are. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I was lucky enough to be able to attend 2 open houses this past week, the Deaconess and Minot Forest schools. They were enthusiastically and well attended. Lots of good presentations, lots of connections between parents and the teachers. It was interesting to see parents sit at the desks of their students, which are not exactly the size of the parents in some cases, but everybody was in good humor, and I think good information was exchanged. And for those parents who are not able to be at the open houses, I encourage you to get involved in other ways, such as the principals' coffees, which are now being held in most of the schools, or at least the elementary schools?
At least the elementary schools, yes.
I think those are valuable times to learn about the things that are going on in the schools, especially the RTI program, which applies to the elementary schools. I think that's it for good news, unless anybody remembers something more. Jessica, do you have some good news?
I do. I just wanted to let everyone know that even though there was some schedule change this year, everyone's adapted well with, I think the students are just upset that they have to change tables at lunches every day, but that's not a big deal.
I would call that great news, not good news. The new schedule is going well.
It is. And today, I don't know if some of you guys knew, but we had a lip dub that the whole entire school participated in at the high school.
Say that one more time.
A lip dub, it's kind of where the whole school comes together, and there's a camera that we walk through the school, and the camera's supposed to like represent a person that you're inviting into the school, and you show them like the different clubs and organizations as they walk through. And then we all met everyone up in the gym, and we were singing the song Cry by Aretha Franklin. So that happened today, and it was very exciting, and everyone was pumped up.
And how are the freshmen doing?
Good. I mean, they're freshmen, but as well as you can expect freshmen to be.
You're welcoming them.
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
Okay.
we are. And I just wanted to note that the middle school is having an open house for parents tomorrow night, Thursday, September 22nd, from I believe it's 5 p.m. to 6:30. So for all parents to come and join and find out about what their students are doing in school.
Great. Thank you. I should have mentioned that. Thank you for remembering.
Welcome.
Okay, let's move on to the minutes of the meeting of August 31st. Does anybody have any additions, corrections, or other comments they'd like to make before we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second? Any further discussion? All those in approval?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain? 4-0-0. Next will be school committee reports. Tonight, because unless I'm wrong, and please feel free to correct me if if I am. We probably don't have any committee reports, so I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about the committees and a few other things. The Policy Review Committee will now be chaired by Mrs. Vugan with Dr. Sylvia also. I have put on this list that I sent you electronically, and Dr. Sylvia, I gave you a copy, that I really think that in addition to the normal duties, that if you could focus on safety, it would be a very good thing. Last meeting we had a discussion about safety as it pertained to opening the schools shortly after a natural disaster. And then Ms. Gillette also commented that she thought there was excessive speeding going on at the on Viking Drive around the high school and middle school. I must say I'm very sympathetic to that issue of speeding, because when I am coaching the tennis team and I'm at the courts, I see a lot of cars going by far too quickly. I can also tell you that in my conversations with our new resource officer, Officer Baptiste, his view, although, and I don't want to mischaracterize what he said, he feels strongly that the high school administration should be handing out disciplinary actions, and he wants to avoid police actions unless it's absolutely necessary. So I think it's particularly important, now I'm talking to you, Dr. Rubinovich, that Mr. Palladino take this very seriously, because we do not want an incident with a child. I know the prior resource officer was always telling people to put on their seatbelts, but this is a much more serious issue in a sense, because speeding could hurt someone rather badly rather quickly. With respect to the discussion we had last week about down wires and live wires, I went to the fire department because I wanted to ask them, and Mr. Funds, feel free to jump in if I say anything that's incorrect, but I wanted to ask them if they know whether the electric company knows when a separation has occurred. In other words, at the moment of separation, is there some kind of alarm or a signal sent to the power company that says, you've just got a separation and you've got a live wire somewhere in this community, and they can narrow it down to where it is? According to the fire department, the answer is no. The only way a live wire is determined is if it's reported by someone in that area. And then their response is to go there and essentially isolate it and do nothing until the power company arrives. So it's extremely labor intensive, and it's also problematic because if it doesn't get reported, it just sits there alive until someone happens to notice it. So that to me is a serious issue in terms of potential problem. The other thing I did was I went to the transportation manager and I asked him, is there an interim middle step between opening the schools and closing the schools? And I suggested to him, could the bus drivers literally do their routes ahead of time, ascertain that things look safe, that there are no trees down, there are no wires down, and there's no reason to alter the route? And he said, yes, it could be done, but it would cost about $1,000 every time we tried to do it because of the labor charges that would be incurred by the drivers. So I just think this is an issue that we shouldn't let drop. I'm not suggesting I know what the solution is, but Ken, do you have any thoughts on the issue of the wires, and did I correctly state the situation?
Yes, our system at NSTAR triggers if there's major transformers, that type of thing, that gives us outages for 2,000 to 3,000 customers. It's impossible to identify a single line down because it could be cable TV, it could be Verizon. So the policy is if there's a line down, police or fire call it in, and we send what we call a troubleshooter out, and they check out and identify this belongs to Comcast or whoever it is, a live wire, and then they will deactivate it at that time. So you're 100% correct on that. If I could just follow up on your other comment, Mr. Chair, was I was being a little leery about bus drivers going out earlier and looking around and identifying lines because, again, they don't know what that line is, how long that line has been there. So, you know, that's probably not in their in the best interest to do that. I know you were trying to get ideas from transportation director, but I know the power company would really be against someone without experience going out and saying on Smith Street, I noticed 2 down lines.
Don't get me wrong, your point is well taken. For them to intervene in any way would be inappropriate, but they would be serving as no different than any concerned citizen who drove by and saw something that looked like it might be a problem. So in that sense, I think, by the way, I'm not recommending we do this, but it seems like the only other step, reasonable step, if we wanted to make that determination. And of course, that would have to be a decision made literally the night before, in all reality. So just food for thought, but if the Policy Review Committee could particularly focus on safety, I think that would be a great idea. The other 4, I'm sorry.
I
Yes.
just wanted to say, I met with the superintendent and with Michelle about the policies, and we've already put it, at least the closure policy, school closure policy, we've put it on the agenda for review at the November meeting.
Thank you. The other 4 committees are superintendent advisory committees. Budget will be Ken and Rachel, community relations, Rhonda and Ken, curriculum review, Cliff and Rachel, and I will continue to do what I'm calling the teacher administrator evaluation committee, and frankly that's been going on for seems like close to 2 years. Once again, I put a requested focus on these committees. It's in no way intended to indicate that you shouldn't, talk about anything you want to talk about. But I think it's particularly important for the Budget Committee because it's likely to be a very difficult budget process that we get a good understanding of why we are spending $440,000 on substitute teachers. My recommendation is that the Budget Subcommittee get a presentation from whoever you choose, Barry, and then subsequently prepare something for the school committee. Involvement of parents is an obvious one, but it's particularly sensitive to it for a variety of reasons. Curriculum review, we're making significant investment in RTI, and I think understanding how well it's going. I will add that I've asked Dr. Rabinovich to not have the committee wait for a year to find out how well things are going, and sort of we cross our fingers and get the MCAS results every September, I guess, and hope they're better. So we think we now have the capacity to give periodic reports about the implementations of things, and in our November 30th meeting, Mr. Luzon will be actually giving a presentation of the kinds of interim reports about student achievement and other measurements that he'll be able to give us throughout the year. And finally, on the teacher administrator evaluation, there's frankly a lot happening. We're officially one of 11 early adopters in the state of Massachusetts with respect to these new evaluations for administrators and teachers. We are also giving a workshop at the Superintendent and School Committee conference in the second week of November at the Mass request. And on the 27th of this month, I will be on a committee a small statewide committee looking at how superintendents are evaluated in the Commonwealth. This committee is being headed by the Deputy Commissioner of Education, Carla Baer. So there's a fair amount happening. And if any of the Budget Community and Curriculum Review Committee members have any trouble getting to a meeting, don't hesitate to let me know, and I will try to be there in your place. The last thing I wanted to mention is I would appreciate it if every school committee member would adopt, so to speak, a school council. I think it would send a great message if we were there and encouraging parental involvement in the schools and in the child's education. If you could get back to me over the next few days with which school you'd like to adopt. Every school has a school council by law. I have meetings. I will be sending out, as soon as I get them, the schedule of the meetings. The only thing I can tell you is that the first school council meeting at the high school is October 4th in the conference room, and at the Deacon's school it's on the 29th. High school is 7 a.m. And the Deacon's school is 3:30 p.m. As soon as I get the information on the other school councils, I will let you know. But if you could let me know which one, if you're able, school you'd like to adopt, I would appreciate it, and I will take whichever ones are left. I think that's it for... Yes, Dr. Sylvia.
Complete with this segment. I just want to make one comment on something that you said earlier.
I am finished unless anybody's got another committee report they want to refer to. If not, Dr. Sylvia, the floor is yours.
Okay. One thing you said earlier was you reiterated a conversation that you had with the new school officer, and I would be remiss if, through my experience as an educator for a gazillion years, if I took issue with his stance. It's not the school's responsibility to monitor traffic patterns. It's the police department's responsibility to monitor traffic patterns. The school administration's got enough to do without worrying about who's speeding down the road. And I honestly feel that if we're going to have a working partnership with the police department and the resource officer, then certainly there should be communication between the administration and the police department. But if they're breaking some kind of a motor vehicle law, then they should be held accountable like anybody else would be held accountable. Secondly,
Can I comment on that quickly?
well, let me just finish my points.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Because my conversation with Officer Baptiste was a general conversation.
Okay,
It
well,
did not apply specifically to traffic.
Well, I'm speaking generally too. If there is a motor vehicle violation,
No.
it should not be handled at the school
He was
level.
talking about within the school, on the
That's
school
fine.
grounds,
That's fine.
unrelated to automobiles.
Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, it would really, really help, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Rabinovich, if we could get Viking Drive approved as a public way. That's been a thorn in my side for quite some time. There is absolutely no reason in the world, given the traffic on that road, that should be an approved public way. And we've got parents, we've got traffic, we've got all kinds of events happening, we have town meeting, we've got all kinds of things going on, and yet it's not considered a public way. And I just think that there is absolutely no reason why Viking Drive shouldn't be considered a public way, and I certainly think that if the very least, it should be an article in the Springtown meeting to make Viking Drive a public way, and that would put a little bit more teeth into motor vehicle violations if they did occur. Thank you.
Thank you. That's an interesting observation. I hadn't even thought about that. I suppose that would mean they had to plow it.
No, I'm not worried about plowing. I'm worried about student safety.
Yes,
and I'm not going to compromise student safety because someone doesn't want to plow the road.
You have any thoughts on that request by Dr. Sylvia?
No, I think it's a great idea. Dr. Sylvia and I had a conversation, I don't know whether it was last year or the year before, regarding a water pipe issue in Viking Drive that the school department had to pay for the excavation and fixing of, because Viking Drive is not a public way. So it would help us on many different levels. I think we would have to go before the Board of Road Supervisors with that request.
I don't know what the format is, but whatever
But
the
we
format
can look
is, we
into
should
that.
do it.
All right, would you report back to us?
Mhm.
Thank you.
That's just my opinion. That's not a directive from me. It's just my opinion.
Oh, I didn't take it as a directive. I took it as a very constructive suggestion, and Dr. Rabinovich will get back to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anything else before we...
One more thing?
Sure.
Dr. Council, you know, school council meetings are public, so anyone
Are
can
public.
attend.
Oh, I understand.
They are public, so anyone can attend.
I understand, and I guess the part of the impetus for this is in the open houses, I have been surprised and frankly pleased that the public is thrilled to see me there and want to talk to me, and I think the more exposure we get to the public, the better it is.
I agree.
Okay.
We should ask somebody to go out. Oh, sorry, because I was going to say they're
Okay.
outside.
Channel 4, we're about to go into that report. Do you need some time to set up? You're welcome. No problem.
Mr. Chairman, on the item, if I can, just to take something out of order.
Sure.
You mentioned adopt a school council.
Yes.
And as part of National Education Week, which is happening November 11th through the 18th, I am proposing that each member of the school board choose a day that they would like to shadow a school principal. And that I would set that up. If you just let me know the day you're available, I will choose which school you go to.
You will choose.
That is correct. To make sure it's one that you're not comfortable with. And so that you can actually see a day in the life of a school principal as part of the celebration of National Education Week.
Are you suggesting we're not sympathetic to the amount of effort it is to be a principal?
The phrase "walk a day in our shoe" or shoes
Yeah, I was gonna
comes
say.
to mind.
Well, I hope they're all
Dr.
ready.
Sylvia, the administrator, has left, though, not to back me up on that. But,
I was about to say, I think Dr. Sylvia knows rather well what it's like to be a school principal. Okay, what were the dates again?
Between November 11th and the 18th, as the National Education Week. There will be another event during that week because we have a guest, a Chinese administrator coming from China, who will be staying with me and shadowing me that week. And we will have a reception during that week in his honor. So that will be a second event. I will get back to you when that's scheduled.
All right, so we don't get to volunteer for a certain school. We just say when we're available and you assign us a school.
Absolutely.
That's
And
pretty.
This is what week? What week?
November
National
11th?
Education Week.
November what?
November 11th through the 18th.
Oh, I'll be back. Okay. Sign me up.
I look forward to it.
Sign me up.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Channel 4, are you set to go? Okay, you're welcome. Dr. Rabinovich.
Okay. During my report tonight, I'm going to read a press release, and this is to the press and to the Wareham School Board. This is regarding a bus incident that occurred yesterday, Tuesday, September 20th, 2011. And tonight's date is September 21st, 2011. On Tuesday, September 20th, around noon, the principal of the Minot Forest and myself became aware that one of our Hammond AM male kindergarten students had fallen asleep on their bus and had not woken up until the bus was parked at the bus driver's home. The child was dropped off at their home during the midday bus route and told his parent what had occurred. The parent called the school and an investigation was started. The transportation coordinator and the principal conducted independent investigations, including talking to the bus driver. An administrative hearing was scheduled for today, Wednesday, September 21st. The outcome of the hearing was that the driver had not followed proper safety protocols and had not made a student check to ensure that the bus was empty, including placing the empty sign on the rear door. The penalty for this infraction was termination. I am happy to report that the child involved in this incident is in good health. And I also want to say that all of our drivers have undergone mandatory training as part of their CDL licensure in safety protocols each year. The student check protocol is always part of our trainings. And again, we will have another training next week where this again will be the #1 item on the agenda for the training of our bus drivers. And unfortunately, they will have to hear about the driver that did not follow safety protocols and was terminated. To the parent of the student involved, we are extremely sorry that this event occurred, and we have taken appropriate actions to try to ensure that this will never happen again. The normal procedures at our elementary schools is asking parents to call school if their child is absent. After this event, we are putting in a protocol where we will call the homes of schools as well as asking parents to call. So we will have a backup system. In this particular case, there was some confusion because the parents had called the day before and had said that their child would not be in school. So when the teacher did not see the child, they did not think to follow it up with the phone call. Plans changed at home. The child did come to school but fell asleep on the bus. Again, this was something that we are not happy about, and I believe we've taken the strongest actions possible. To the members of the committee, if anybody has any questions.
Dr. Sylvia, any questions?
No, I have any questions. It's regrettable. Anytime something like this happens, it's very regrettable. But I don't have any questions, but I've got a comment, is that I think that the quick response of the administration and the action taken is appropriate. But I also have to say, to my knowledge, and I've been in Wareham a long, long time, and we've been in the bus business for well over 20 years, I don't think this has ever happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I really feel bad for the parents of this child. I feel bad for the child because heaven only knows what was going through a kindergarten's head being left on the bus. It's regrettable, but unfortunately, things do happen, and we've got to do a real good job about making sure that it doesn't happen again. In terms of the appropriateness of the actions taken post-incident, I don't have a problem with it, as long as the training goes on. And I know it does, because I viewed the training. I know the training goes on. And I know they have to check that bus at the end of every run. And so that's protocol that's always been enforced. So unfortunately, this individual didn't do it, and we had this incident. And I really feel bad for the child and the parents, because it's regrettable, it really is. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Bugan?
I was in Dr. Rabinovich's office for a scheduled meeting soon after he became aware of the incident, and I think that as a parent of a kindergartner, a 5-year-old who goes to the Hammond school system, I just want to state how serious this situation was taken by all parties, by all of the administration. I was there, I saw it firsthand, and I just wanted to say that, ensure the parents of this community that the situation is very serious. This situation was taken very seriously, and quick action was taken. And again, as a parent, my heart, I couldn't even imagine. My heart goes out to the parents of this child, and you know, I think that we'll just continue doing exactly what we're doing to ensure that it doesn't happen. Thank you.
Mr. Fonts?
I just agree with my colleagues. It's unacceptable, and I do appreciate the quick response by the principal and the transportation director. It's just a bad situation, and I'm also happy to hear the comment from the superintendent that we're going to be proactive and call the parents, especially at that young kindergarten, first, second, third grade level, when a child is missing. I know our transportation director really at our meetings talked about safety and the bus drivers doing their due diligence to make sure that this doesn't happen. Dr. Sylvia said it's never ever happened. Shouldn't have happened this time.
No, it shouldn't.
So, again, on behalf of the school committee, apologies to the parents of that child.
To the child.
Thank God that everything worked out, but again, you don't like to see anyone lose their position of employment, but there's no excuse for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Sylvia?
Almost done. Go.
I share the comments and concerns of my colleagues. As someone who has actually been through this training, I can tell you that the emphasis on safety and this particular issue is always there. I suspect that every driver, as a result of this incident, is going to be that much more careful. So if there's a silver lining to this cloud, it's the fact that it's going to emphasize that much more the safety associated with checking the bus. Just as a point of clarification, the call home that is now going to occur, for which grades will this apply?
To all our schools. We currently have it in operation at the high school that if a child is absent, the home gets a phone call saying that the child is absent. It will now occur K through 12.
So you're absent.
You will get a phone call home.
Well, that's all well and good, and we get those phone calls, but there's no guarantee that phone call is going to come in a timely manner because it's on an automated system. So that could, God forbid if it ever happened again. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do this, but using an automated system, there's no guarantee that that's going to be done on a timely basis. That child could still be on a bus before the parent finds out that they're not in school.
The phone calls will be made within 5 minutes of attendance being taken.
It will be.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
That's the beauty of an automated system.
Right.
If you have over 100 phone calls to make, you can do it within a minute.
Okay.
And just one point also, just going through, getting my child into school. Right now, it is a requirement of the parents to call in when their parents are going to be, when their child is going to be absent. That's not a requirement, correct, at the middle school or the high school?
At the middle school it is, but not
Okay,
at the high school.
at the high school. And so that, so there is one piece of the safety check, or the connection between the school and the parent, that it is a requirement for me to call in when that child is not going to be there. But then this is just added on top of that, that as soon as possible, within, like you're saying, 5 minutes, that now also a call will go out to the parent, because it's very, very rare, Dr. Rabinovich, that we would not hear from a parent when the child is coming in.
Correct. Also, you have the capability of using 5 different phone numbers. So, we have cell phones, we have home phones, we have work phones that these calls can go to.
Okay, anything else on this unfortunate incident? I think we can all be grateful that there was no harm to the child. Okay, thank you.
If you don't mind, if I can pass out the...
Yes.
You're welcome.
Have a good night. Next is Ms. Miranda for our financial report.
Good evening, everyone. But before I begin, I'd like to make some comments through the chair in terms of a comment that Dr. Sylvia made about making Viking Drive a private way.
No,
From
public.
Public way, I'm sorry. Because from a financial standpoint, we have had more than just the road incident. We had a lightning that struck a pole 2 years ago. that was, basically what we're told is because any utilities that are on private property, it then becomes our responsibility to repair. We then, the school department, through our budget, had to pay to fix that pole. This more recent incident, as soon as the grounds person had been going around, he saw that it was down, he, called NSTAR. When we really got through to them, and in defense of NSTAR, they were inundated, with the storm and all the damage that was happening. That's when we were informed that because it is on private property, we would have to repair the pole.
Someone help me understand this. The taxpayers paid to have that road built. The taxpayers paid for the buildings that are on the road, on either side of the road. It's all taxpayer-funded infrastructure. Why is it, quote, private property?
It has to be accepted by the town through the Commission of Road.
I understand, but it would seem to me a virtually automatic process because it is in fact taxpayer-funded, built roads and structures. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless it's literally going to be a procedural matter which would be routinely approved. And if so, then I applaud Dr. Sylvia for bringing it up because it seems to make a lot of sense. Anything else on that, Anna?
Yeah, because you will see the impact. That cost us $8,500 because we
The
had
pole.
to pay for the
The pole and the
replacement of the pole, rewiring, the whole job was
Well,
that.
we're all in this together, and it seems to me it's public, and we ought to see why it shouldn't happen.
But there's a potential good side to that coin is someone had said that NSTAR electric poles, that there is a process that you can actually ask them to take it over even if it's still on private private land. So Mr. Fonts was kind enough to give me the contact, and actually I'm just starting to engage in a conversation with this NSTAR contact to find out what do we need to do, what's the process, what's involved, so that we can really say, now you, because then they would be
21 years.
responsible for the maintenance on the pole.
Okay, we'll wait for the report back. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, that's it.
Proceed.
All right. I need to share with you, I've discovered something through our accounting system, and I guess I hadn't come across it before because we had never really reduced the appropriated budget within the year. What I'm seeing when I'm looking at my numbers for the monthly financial report is that in our system, when you're looking at prior either monies available or the balance, it's capturing that amount sort of real time in the past. So stay with me. So if the first 3 or 4 months of the school year we had a certain appropriation,
Before town meeting.
it was comparing it, it'll compare it to that appropriation. We did a huge, the decrease in the budget. So what I'm finding is that these percentages are going to be off until we catch up to that moment in time in our accounting system. It's a minuscule, difference. It's not, it's not impacting, it's not translating into a lot of money, but I did want to make you aware that you're going to see until we catch up. The other piece is, there are times, let's say if a bill gets paid twice, they send an invoice, they send 2 invoices, and then we paid it twice, and then we have to, once you back it out, the other aspect of our accounting system is that once you back it out, and after there's been a journal entry, you really can't, it stays as a receipt in the system. So even at the end of the year, I have to take those receipts out. For example, last year there were $4,016.24 in journal types of receipts that I had to kind of keep track of throughout the year to get appropriate balances. And the $470,000 from the edu jobs also is going to skew that number a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay. In our administration accounts, I mean, this is the time of the year, you don't really see too much of a difference. At this point, I would just point out, for example, in the only a change this year in the business and finance we planned to actually pay for all our finance audits out of a business finance account. When we go through our end-of-year audit with our auditors, they're very good about making sort of improvements or enhancements to how we are organizing and how we're collecting our data, and that was a suggestion. It wasn't a finding, but a suggestion that they felt it'd be more appropriate finance, any types of audit expenses should be grouped in one account and to keep track of it. So you'll see that difference, that the increase there, huge increase, is to pay for our audits in that particular line. Other than that, overall, there's only a 1.86% difference in the accounts in that. In instructional leadership, what I see a little bit different is that we've added now the 2315 function, which is now the instructional leaders, the new positions that we put into the elementary schools. So you'd see a slight variance there. Overall, just a 2.23% difference. We've, this year, in terms of organization, moved the 2110 function into instructional leadership so that it will match the actual DESE report that they then publish once annually. Teaching and other services, 2.9. What this tells me is looking at classroom specialists. This year we have one other. The 2310 is a part-time position that we now have ELL, English Language Learner Kids. So we have, this is a new half-time position which requires its own function. It can't be grouped with 2305 regular classroom teachers. They truly, they call it specialists because they're providing a different level of service. As you can see, I mean, sort of usual sorts of things. We've got the paras, librarian, substitutes yet. We're not seeing, and I would think that we wouldn't see a big variance. It is the beginning of the year. People tend to come back and everyone's in good health, and hopefully it's going to stay like that for a while. Professional student services, guidance and psych, only a 1.08% difference in overall between the years. In other student services, closer to 3. Okay. Athletics, the expenditure we've actually put in, I looked at it, it's because we've processed and we've actually bought supplies earlier this year than we would have normally. So it looks like we've got, this decrease in the line item, but it's because we've actually been buying materials. Last year it was more like November, December that, most of those orders, for the supplies were processed. So that accounts for that variance that you see there. Professional development, less than 1% variance. As you can see, we're steadily doing training as we were last year. A sizable amount of training happened over the summer. I'm sure that that's, information that Mrs. Rotella will fill you in at a later time. And also the start of the year. We had teachers right up until the very week before school were involved in coursework, classes, workshops, and that sort of thing, committees. So that's where we are. Yeah. Instructional materials, we've had, you'll see a larger variance, 8%, slightly more. And again, it counts too that we've ordered earlier. I looked at the comparison, how, what had we, and because we started, we really tried to complete any supplementary purchases over the summer. We wanted the materials to be here, before the start of school. That went pretty well this year. Oftentimes, you can put an order in July, and you may not get it till October. It depends on the type of product it is, if it's a very popular textbook series, or we see, those kind of variances. But basically, we've just really been able to get materials into the rooms. In operations and maintenance, again, you'll see that huge 4,100 custodial services, because that's where, in the prior year, we basically $470,000, $660. So that's a big difference there. And that figure's not going to catch up until we get to that point where the school committee actually officially approved that decrease in our appropriation, overall appropriation by that amount of money. Utilities, I'm not happy. I've started pulling some reports, and I'm looking at it. It's not. I have to figure out which utility is there this variance with. It's not an electric. Water and sewer went up. I don't know if that accounts for the full difference, but it was substantial. And we're going to be analyzing that, whether it's, because other contracts, and when I do figure that out, I'll let the committee know. Ground services, really not too much of a change. And in maintenance, we did a lot of maintenance over in the summer, as well as with monies that were saved at the end of the year from our utility accounts. So those repairs, even though they, happened in May and June, so that actually is helping the principal's budgets, because, there are things that we were able to do back in May and June that they had planned for. Okay, this summer we're going to we replaced the ramp, 2 handicap ramps. That's all, monies that then will be saved in those principal budgets for this year for operating purposes. So that's good. Insurance and other tuitions, just about the same, very less than a 1% variance. So then in summary for the LEA budget, you're looking at 85% and 89, but I would say this is really more like 88% prior year, and not really 89. Can I entertain any questions, specific questions about the different functions before I go on to revolving account?
Rhonda?
The one question that I had was around the utilities, just because we don't.
I'm sorry.
I'm looking forward to hearing, what your investigation comes up with around the utilities, because that was when
water and
I know it's
sewer
the beginning of the
really
year. It's
went
the
up.
only one that, because we have no clue what winter we're going to have in front of us. So
Yeah, exactly. So looking at that, something.
The number of EDUs is a constant, though, right?
For the most part, if, for example, it depends, over the summer, if we use a building to house programs, and it was the same the prior year, yes, it stays constant. But let's say if we close down a building one year and then the following year we used it, then you're not going to see a constant between those years, Jeff?
I think what he's talking about is when they charge us for storage, for instance, there is this EDU rate. So, for instance, the middle school, if I remember correctly, had 15 EDUs. And so the issue is that the cost per EDU has gone up substantially for water and storage.
But the number of EDUs
is constant.
Is constant.
Yes, because that's by building, and they do it by, how many toilets you have and so forth and so on.
I misinterpreted that. I thought it was more usage. So you were
Sorry.
asking about usage.
Ken?
You all set, Rhonda?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ken?
No questions on this.
Cliff? Just so I understand, I'm looking at I guess you'd call it the financial statement format, and it's got 91.91, which is consistent with that, but then it has 95% in the last column, and you've got 94.26. Is there a reason for that discrepancy?
That's the variance, because prior year, that's the prior year. It's going to be off because it's like comparing, let's say, beginning of last year. We had 26 million, just for, I'm going to round the figures out, 26 million.
Stop.
Okay.
The 94.26
Mhm.
reflects what?
That is the prior year's percentage.
Okay? And the 95% that I'm looking at on my sheet.
Is our current.
It appears that the round up was.
No, the 95 is last year. It's in the last year's column.
Yes, that's exactly. The 94.26 is in last year's column.
So is the 95.
On this sheet, the one with the
91.91.
the school function summary,
The
the
second one.
last column on that, on page 4 of 4, under percent prior year, it says 95%, instead of, as you have up on the summary,
Beta.
94.2.
That's the variance, though. Okay, for example, on this.
Do you understand it?
Yes,
I don't
it
wanna
was
dwell
what
on
I
it.
was trying to explain. It is kind of complex to
Well-
wrap your head around, because.
Let me just say,
Yeah.
I think that where the confusion is that we understand that there is a discrepancy, absolutely, but
Mhm.
is the discrepancy in, we understand it's in the 95%, is it also in the 94.26? I think the only question that he's asking is that
No.
why, because the 9191 is exactly the same in both reports.
For example, if the 94.26 is a more accurate, because then I accounted for that 470,000 that we had, a decrease in our budget.
Okay, fine. I don't want to dwell on it. So if that's the more accurate number, we're still talking about over a 2% difference
Mm-hmm.
between this year and last year. And 2% doesn't sound like much, except that 2% is more than $500,000. So,
It is, actually.
and that's a lot of absolute dollar differences over a very short period of time. So can you sort of generalize and say, why do we have more than $500,000 difference between this year and last year at the same moment in
My
time?
bookkeeper believes, and she's been saying it, where are all these bills? Definitely we've had an increase in the volume of invoices that we've processed this beginning of the school year. She found very unusual, just a ton of bills. So we're still analyzing it, because you've got to have a couple of months to look at it. And the other thing is doing all the buying that we did, and all those bills coming in now. For example, last year, materials that we would have purchased in July and August, if they weren't delivered, we didn't pay for those goods until November. Whenever we actually received the goods and services. We got a lot of stuff early, so she thinks that, in part, may be it. We had some very large textbook purchases that came in.
So you're not concerned with this because you think it more has to do with
I'm
the
not
speed of
concerned.
processing than it has to do with actual
Timing.
ultimate variances
Timing.
of spending?
And timing.
Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Timing.
No, I was just
I
going
think.
to say exactly that.
Okay.
Believe me,
Okay,
if I was
thank you.
concerned, I would tell you. I would let you know we've got a problem.
Okay, why don't you continue with the revolving funds?
Okay. The revolving accounts, the only ones that I would point out to you would be in our reserve asbestos revolving account. You'll see a significant difference there. Over the summer, we planned this project for the Hammond School. The Hammond School has been involved in a very lengthy and comprehensive accreditation process through NIAC. NIAC stands for the National Association of the Education of Young Children. And they require that it have a certain code in terms of lead. Okay. So what we found, we had to actually have an inspection, because all this documentation you have to send to them. They did find that on the exterior of the buildings, up along the roofing eaves, some of the entranceways, there were also a few high up in the auditorium, up on the ceiling. So we actually had to contract with a contractor, came in, did all the remediation, and the building now will satisfy the NIAC standard that they set. They set a higher standard than we're even really required to set in public schools. the organization sets its own standards, and so that's that. The insurance account, that accounts for the pole repair, the $8,500. The good news is, we did file a insurance claim, and we will be paid fully for that. We had the coverage, so we will regroup that $8,500 for that pole. Other thing would be, this year, just to let you know, thus far, School Choice is paying for 3 positions, positions at the co-op. And we're also, West Academy is also paying for positions this year. Yeah, so we started that. That's about all I have to say for the revolving accounts. Do you have any other specific questions about?
Ken?
It's not about the revolving account, but can I ask a question about an athletic thing, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Excuse me. Under the athletics, it's probably in your budget. Is there a reason why the stands at the high school aren't up on the visitor side? Is that a cost measure of the stands?
Oh, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we had an insurance, Maya, our insurance company, does this annual inspection. Last year, they came in, they inspected, and they found that they said basically some of the bleachers that we've been moving that were causing damage, causing structural damage, because, like, for example, the bleachers in Palmer Field, our grounds people have to take apart all those crustets and move it in 2 pieces. So what we've done is they've arrived, and you're going to love them. We have portable bleachers on the field as of yesterday. So once we realized that, we really was not, there was liability involved in moving those bleachers anymore. So we did purchase bleachers at the cost of around $8,000. We've met with the Tigers organization, who basically, wants to help support to offset those costs. We will be using the $3,000 annual monies that they do give us for field maintenance. We're going to apply it towards that. We still have the gateman to bill for electrical use over the summer, so I'll be taking those funds as well and applying it to it. But it was really a safety issue, and that's why we haven't had them. But they're there now.
One more, Mr. Chairman. Do we have set dates that maybe Dr. Rabinovich knows that the athletic director will be coming in front of this committee with reports because we fell off the chart last year with that?
Right after fall
quarterly.
sports, we will schedule the athletic director to come and do a report. After winter sports, and then a wrap-up and spring sports. So we'll have them come before us 3 times a year from now on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Cliff?
All set.
Rhonda?
Last year in athletic receipts, we had, I know it's 1 month difference. Last year in October, we had $44,000 in that account. This year in September, we have $25,000. Are we seeing a drop-off there, or?
Our major sport really hasn't, started up.
You think
I
a month
think you
will
have
make
to
a
look at
difference?
where we were.
Yes.
I mean, I could run those reports. I'd have to actually look at, my reports, Rhonda, in terms of what was our beginning balance, what we carried over. It could have been different from the previous year. That's one possibility. When, comparing whatever monies we carry over. I don't know if that was the reason why. But, because it's really the revolving account thus far is only paid for things like, the bus drivers' the actual trips and officials. I wonder, we may have already paid part of the hockey bill. Again, timing, maybe we hadn't paid it at this point in time last year.
I'll wait until the next report and probably ask that question again, because it looks like last year that the only difference of what we carried over from last year was only about $3,000, so I just.
Difference? Okay.
But that's fine. I mean, I know that the months are even different, so I just wanted to bring it up, something to.
Okay.
I'll bring it up again next time. Thanks.
Just a quick question on transportation. I noticed we got down to 0 as of June 30th, but we're back up to almost $22,000 as of, and what is the actual date as of for this report on the revolvers?
Remember, Michelle ran at 9:15.
Okay,
The
so as
date's
of the
up at the top.
15th, 2 weeks into the school year approximately,
Mhm.
we're already $22,000 up.
Yes.
That's good news?
Because, yes, there were invoicing that, receipts that would have been received July and August for some work that we would have done transporting major school systems, New Bedford, Fall River owed us some money, some different cost shares. It ends up usually school systems wait and you don't get the money until after July, so it couldn't go towards FY11. So those receipts accounting for 12.
So this is cash accounting is what you're saying? Even though if the service was provided in June, you wouldn't recognize the revenue until you get the cash?
Absolutely can't.
Is this volume greater than you anticipated?
I don't know the answer to that.
Right on spot.
I could ask Mr.
On spot.
Tatro.
Okay.
I don't think so, but
Okay. So you never accrue. That's interesting. I guess I should have known that. Okay.
no.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. Mrs. Vitella, you're up.
You may want to get a cup of coffee and this
Okay.
is a rather lengthy presentation coming up.
We'll take 5 while she prepares for the MCAS presentation.
Good idea. While you're taking 5, I'm going to put a paper handout on the table.
Does Russell Cable go with the commercial?
Commercial.
Because the state has updated everything since Friday.
She said I have nothing on her as far as
No,
her
well, the
busy
other kids in my
schedule.
school don't.
So I said, except for 50.
Can't compete with that.
Compared to my peers.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're resuming with the MCAS presentation by Mrs. Vitella, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Floor is yours, Jan.
Thank you, Mr. Sweat. This evening, I have a very long presentation. I am going to go through it slide by slide, explaining as I go. I want to tell you right up front that the state, as a response to federal incentives, including the Race to the Top grant, as well as federal imperatives, have added layers to the assessment accountability system. So I'm going to walk you through the layers, and please feel free to ask questions, and I will beg the chair to move us along if we get stuck on one aspect of this.
Yeah, I want to stress, I don't want to save all the questions for last. Pause at appropriate times,
Okay.
ask if there are questions, otherwise it's going to be too difficult.
Absolutely. So, as we have in the past, I'm here to report adequate yearly progress, AYP. Added to that are the Massachusetts leveling system and NCLB improvement status, which is not the same as the Massachusetts level. Through it all, regardless of what the educational bureaucrats throw at us, Wareham Public Schools still stands on our mission to educate all students for life's responsibilities, challenges, and opportunities. Assessment is simply a snapshot. The first snapshot we're going to talk about is adequate yearly progress. As you know, the goal set by the federal government under the No Child Left Behind Act is 100% proficiency by 2014. This is enforced through Title I regulations initially, and now it is also enforced through all grant and state funds. So we have layers upon layers of regulations. It is also calculated in one-year cycles. AYP, or adequate yearly progress, is based on a state and federal formula of participation. The number of students who are assessed must be 95% or better. CPI, which is the Composite Performance Index, and whether or not the improvement target was met, plus attendance. What this means is if we have 95% of our students participate in MCAS assessments, if our Composite Performance Index meets the improvement target, but we have less than 95% of our students in average daily attendance, we don't meet adequate yearly progress. So you have to hit them all. And here we have the explanation. What it means here that either CPI or improvement target, the Composite Performance Index is a target arbitrarily set by Massachusetts. If we don't meet that state target, which by the way the state hasn't met their own target, but we meet our improvement target, then we can meet adequate yearly progress. There is another aspect of this formula that is not always affecting us but does impact our scores this year, and that is safe harbor. Safe harbor designation is given to any school that has had a greater than 10% increase in low-income students and a greater than 10% increase in the number of students scoring proficient. And this has affected in 3 separate areas the Minot Forest School this year. So Minot Forest has increased the percentage of low-income students in their enrollment by more than 10% and increased the percentage of students scoring proficient more than 10%. So kudos to Minot Forest. The Composite Performance Index targets, which is a state formula where we receive points based on students' performance level as well as special education portfolios. The target for 2011 in English Language Arts is 95.1. In mathematics is 92.2. And it is a target. The improvement target, to keep it as simple as possible, is the specific change needed for continuous improvement. In other words, the state calculates what a base score was in 2000 1, and then readjusted it in 2003, subtracts that from a CPI of 100 and divides it by the number of years to 2014, and that is the improvement target that needs to be met. It is calculated separately for the aggregate and for each subgroup. And that is what will give us AYP if we are within 2.5 plus or minus the CPI improvement target. Now, these are the state targets as they've been set. Our improvement targets are unique to Wareham. So you can see ELA is in blue, math is in red. Now, the additional dimension this year in this whole system of district leveling and ranking is the percentage of students scoring proficient or higher. And here you see, these are brand new figures that have just come out this year that show a steady, almost steady increase for English language arts in students by grade level scoring proficient or better. There's some dips, but overall it's an increase. However, in spite of these statewide increases in the percentage of students who are proficient, the state CPI is 84.5, which does not meet their target in ELA, which, rather than go back to the slide, is 95.1. The mathematics chart here shows you the percentage of students scoring proficient or better. Again, mostly increased, some dips at various grade levels. Specifically, we see a dip in grades 6 and 7 that you'll see is pretty common across the state. This is average. Once again, the state results show proficiency level, but it does not show the CPI. The state CPI in mathematics, again, does not meet their own target of 92.2. It is 84.1. Massachusetts accountability and assistance levels. This is the new ranking system. The ranking system has been developed by the state in response to Race to the Top funding. They had to come up with a system of ranking school districts, and then as a result of that ranking based on student achievement and student growth, as well as proficiency percentages, determine who were the neediest districts. And then the lowest leveled districts would receive more assistance and would receive a greater percentage of Race to the Top funds. So this leveling system is tied to the grants, not only the major Race to the Top grant, but all of the sub-grants that are being funded through Race to the Top funds. The level 1 just is no status, and they receive no additional funding assistance. Level 2 can be a district that has schools in corrective action and or restructuring, but usually it's subgroups only. Sometimes it's the aggregate, but it is ranked as level 2 because it's not as low as other school districts. I'm going to just continue even though the lights have gone off. Level 3 school districts are among the lowest 20% schools statewide, not districts, because a district is placed in level 3 if any school in the district is level 3. So if there are 25 schools in some district, but 1 or 2 of them are level 3, then the whole district is given a level 3 rank. Then they're level 4, which is the next lowest performing. They are considered the least improved 20% of schools statewide. So that if at level 3 you could have schools improving, but you're still among the lowest performing. In level 4, you're both lowest performing and least improved. And there's only 4% of the schools are just in the low 90s across the state. By federal and state standards, not more than 4% of the schools can be in levels 4 and 5. There are no level 5 schools in Massachusetts. So your rank is not only dependent on academic performance and growth, but it's dependent on how much better or worse other schools do in the state, because it's a percentage of the overall schools.
Do you know how many schools are in each level?
I do not know in levels 1 and 2, but in level 3 in Massachusetts, there are currently 304 schools.
Thank you.
There's all of these regulations are based on the Mass General Law, which was passed July 1st, 2011, stating that level 3 is the lowest 20% in performance. Then the regulation was added that a district is placed in level 3 if it has a school, one school, placed in level 3. It's a double-edged sword. No one wants to be level 3. On the other hand, it gets you more money so that you can improve. And when you improve, you lose the money. So that's how the system works. Another aspect of this system is that charter schools, primary schools, which are grade 2 and below, and schools with less than 4 years of data or with low enrollment under 40 students in a grade level are not in this ranking system at all. They do not receive a rank. They're not in the leveling system. Of the schools who remain, there's 304. Yes,
One
sir.
second. Cliff?
Let me get this thing straight. So, in essence, a charter school can claim that they have a superior educational opportunity for students with no quantitative data. Is that correct?
They will have quantitative data, but they're not
On the
not
ranking.
ranked. They are not ranked.
Thank you. That's absurd.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll wait.
You sure?
Yeah.
While we're talking, I'm going to go through the whole methodology of these levels and where our schools are, and then I'll go into the usual results. But I'm going to finish this part, and then I'll pause again. The rankings are based on 4 years of achievement and improvement data. And this, by the way, our superintendent has challenged me to put in simple English. So, they take English Language Arts and Math Composite Performance Indexed, plus the MCAS warning or failure percentage, plus the dropout rate, plus the graduation rate, and they put it into this formula. This formula has not been released to my knowledge. Then they take movement indicators, which is the median student growth percentile for all schools across the state in both ELA and math. Then they take the mean of 2010 plus 2011 CPI minus the mean of 2008 and 2009 CPI. Together, they formulate average rankings across all achievement and improvement indicators, giving a greater weight to current levels and to improvement of a 4-to-1 weight. Obviously, more weight is placed on data using this formula from recent years as compared to previous years. Using this formula, the state of Massachusetts has assigned accountability levels in addition to NCLB status to our schools. The Ethel Hammond School is at level 1 automatically because it ends in grade K. The East Wareham Preschool is below grade 2, so they're automatically level 1. The Minot Forest School, based on its improvement indicator, is also as a level 1 school based on both achievement and improvement indicators. The John W. Deacon School is level 2. The Wareham Middle School is level 3. The Cooperative School is automatically level 1 because of its low enrollment. West Wareham Academy is automatically level 1 because of its low enrollment. And the Wareham High School, which was cut off, is level 1. I'm going to go back here and pause and answer any questions about the levels or the leveling methodology. Yes.
So I am going to ask my question before. Can you go back to the slide before that?
Sure.
So again, you basically said that charter schools are not part of this ranking system.
Correct.
And okay, why? First of all, is it because that the state then doesn't have to? So then they're not going to get additional funding. Generally, can you tell me why they've decided that charter schools should not be part of the ranking?
They have a separate funding formula for charter schools. It doesn't mean they don't get funding, but they're not. I could not answer why they're not part of this ranking system, other than it was an arbitrary decision of the state. The superintendent has an answer, though.
Okay.
Well, the first thing on there is achievement indicators with CPI from MCAS. Charter schools, am I correct? They don't take MCAS?
No, some do.
No, they do. Okay, so this
It
Some
depends
do.
on the type of charter school that it is. But if they are a public charter school
No, but I'm talking
receiving
about
funding,
private. All right, go ahead.
if they are receiving funds through the per pupil expenditures,
Mhm.
where towns have to contribute to the cost of the charter school,
So they do
they
take
do
the
take
MCAS.
MCAS.
Okay.
because this is
I
my
stand
follow-up
corrected.
question. There was an article in Boston.com today where it basically listed out the highest performing schools in math and English for MCAS.
Yes.
The majority of them are charter schools. The majority. There's only one I'm going to call it, it's not specialty, but they're either academies or they're performing arts. There's one performing arts, Boston Latin Academy, as well as Boston Latin, and then a couple others. But the majority of them are charter schools. And so how can I know that it would probably hurt us in the long run if they were included, because then there would be, or I don't know if it would or not. But so my question is this: what are charter schools, if the charter schools are ranking at the highest level, or at least the ones that they put on Boston.com, what do the charter schools have that the public education don't when it comes to MCAS? And I know you could say a million different things, but when it comes to MCAS, what are charter schools doing when it comes to MCAS that we're either not able to or
I'd hesitate to answer your question, quite honestly, Rhonda, not having seen the article. Or
they don't give me any information in the article. They basically just say, here's a list of schools that were the
well,
highest.
that's my concern right there, because you've got a newspaper organization ranking schools. I'd have to see the whole picture, know what they're using for MCAS data, are they using performance
It was
scores?
based on
Are they-
numbers.
Pardon?
Strictly numbers
For
of the
which
highest
numbers?
scores for math and for English. Oh, for 10th grade. Sorry, it was only for 10th grade.
And are they using student growth percentile numbers, performance scaled
Sorry,
scores
I don't know
numbers?
that information.
That's my concern. I couldn't tell you because I don't know what numbers they're using.
You all set, Rhonda?
I'll be happy
Right
to
now
look
I am.
into it.
Go ahead.
Oh, wait.
Dr. Sylvia
sorry,
May.
Ron, I thought you were done.
She's done.
I'll go out there, I'll put my neck in the news. Charter schools are on their completely different wavelength, they're on their wavelength, they're on a different set of rules, they're on a different set of expectations, and the bottom line is, they select. They select. And so, it's very, very easy to show good scores on an MCAS if in fact they're required to take one, because they select.
Mhm.
And, you know, wouldn't it be nice if we could select? Well, we don't. We have to educate everybody, depending on where they come from, their ethnic background, their socioeconomic background, their educational background, whatever demographic you want to talk about. We take them all.
But isn't that what public education is
That's
supposed to
exactly
be?
right. That's exactly right. So, you know, and it's all well and good, and I'm not saying that if I was a parent that I wouldn't be looking at a charter school. I mean, I have to be honest, but you know what? They're not on the same, they're not on the same parallel. They're not on the same platform. And no matter what you do, or how you try to even it out, you can't take away the fact that they have a selected clientele in that school. Period, the end.
I hate to correct my distinguished colleague, but it's not quite that simple. They don't actually select. There is a lottery, but de facto they select in the sense that the only people who participate in the lottery are parents that care, which is every teacher I have ever met and ever will meet would take a child from a parent that cares.
Not all the kids are in the lottery.
Well, the kids that are in the lottery are the ones where the parents apply to be in the lottery.
But on a magnet school, not all the kids are in a lottery.
That's
You've got a performing
no,
arts school, you've
sorry.
got a commerce academy.
Well, that's different. I'm not talking.
No, the charter schools.
They're charter schools.
I'm talking about the broad category of charter schools where the state requires them to hold a lottery. So you're right. In a magnet school, that's a little different. The second thing that needs to be understood is, just as in regular public schools, you can always point to exceptional charter schools. But the data says the charter schools are no different than public schools. There's some great ones, there's some mediocre ones, and there's some terrible ones. And we need to remember that as we look at data that says, gee, look at those great charter schools. Well, they don't show you the awful charter schools, and they certainly do exist.
In fact, one article recently came out before the test results saying that the percentages are the same, public charter or public.
That's not to say, to Rhonda's point, that it may be that these unique charter schools are doing something special that we could learn from.
Absolutely.
That's a different matter. And let's hope that the spirit of the charter law, which was that they're doing things creatively, differently, looser regulations, and that they should share the good things they're doing with everybody. Let's hope that that spirit is in fact happening when it comes to what charter schools are doing. Because if they're doing something great, let us know.
And you're absolutely right. The original idea behind charter schools was that they would model innovative instructional and educational practices that could then be shared on a broader scale. And we all hope to see more of that.
Unless there are any more questions, can we continue? Okay.
I'm going to quickly go ahead to where we left off. Our 6-year comparison in AYP status across the district is a mixed picture. In English language arts, our subgroups across the district have improved while the aggregate has dipped. And you will see that this is directly related to specific pockets across the district. There are some schools that have improved significantly, but those that have not improved but have actually declined outweigh the improvements. In mathematics, we've seen significant improvements for the second year in a row in the aggregate, but it has not spread to all of the subgroups. And I'll go through this step by step. As a district, under NCLB, we have no status, which is a good thing, in English language arts, and we are in corrective action for subgroups. That is our NCLB status. Our Massachusetts status is level 3 because we have one level 3 school district.
And just a quick question.
Yes, 1 second.
So, just to be clear, the ranking system, we can't compare that to last year because this is a new ranking that came out?
Came out July 1st, 2011.
Okay, so I mean, because I know that there was a different, they categorized differently last year, so but we can't do a comparison for the middle school or for what
we can do an AYP comparison in NCLB status, which is the federal status.
Yep.
But we cannot do a comparison for state. No, this is a brand new ranking system. In mathematics, whoops, I'm sorry. English, and you see mathematics. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me go forward here. I've gone backwards and forward too many times. This is the state versus Wareham CPI. And again, the CPI is what determines our federal NCLB status. As you can see, that in English language arts, the state has moved up to 87.2. In Wareham, we're at 84.5, approximately where we were last year across the entire district. And again, you're going to have to look at the new pages I passed out tonight, because these scores these CPI scores were just released yesterday. The state mathematics CPI, I'm sorry, I said 81, it's 79.9, that was adjusted again yesterday. And our Wareham CPI across the district is 74.7. Breaking this down in a 6-year comparison, you see that our ELA literacy is pretty stagnant, and I'll be talking a little bit more about what we're doing to address those needs. Our subgroups have shown some improvement, as you can see, but overall we have a need in the district on English language arts literacy. And with the shift to the Common Core of a focus on informational text, this is an area we know we need to give special attention, both through RTI and our tiered instruction, as well as through whole classroom instruction. In percentage proficiency percentage or better. Again, this is a new system. Although they show 4 years results here, this is the first time it's been reported. So you can see that as far as percentage proficiency or better, then that is a percentage of students who have scored proficient or better, 240 or better, we have gone up slightly in the aggregate. We are going up slightly in most of the subgroups. Mathematics 6-year comparison, you can see there that in the aggregate we have pretty much stayed the same and need to show better growth. We see some growth in the subgroups across the board, but not in the aggregate. For our percentage proficiency or better in mathematics, you can see that the proficiency percentage has increased in some areas, but not all of the subgroups. Again, and I want to stress this, because of the grades that are tested, we don't always have the same groups in the subgroups, and that significantly affects the percentage who are scored in the proficiency or better range. Because when you get a smaller number, it takes very few to change the subgroup. So the subgroup numbers will vacillate a great deal.
1 second. Cliff.
Yes, Cliff.
Through you, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, Dr. Sylvia.
That's okay. I answered anything. Could you just refresh my memory, and I know you've gone over this before.
That's okay.
In order for a subgroup to be recognized by the state, district-wide, is there a number?
Yes.
What is it?
40 over 2 years.
40 over 2 years.
Yes. So it could be 10 and 30. It doesn't have to be, it has to be an average of 20 for 2 years in a row.
And there's really no way to verify that, obviously.
Yes. I mean, we can check the actual numbers of students participating in the test, so we can be sure of the numbers that are included in the results.
You know, statistically speaking, there is a considerable decrease over last year in Native American, and I didn't even know we had that large of a Native American population in Wareham, to be honest with you.
Now, this is hard to verify because the students self-select their ethnicity.
Right, right.
And as a former middle school principal in another school district that I will not name, there was 1 year since 2001 that I had a group of 6th graders who decided they would all be Native American.
We don't have to go into
So
detail,
that happens.
all right. No problem.
Most embarrassing for the principal, however.
Can I dispute your characterization of not much progress? Let me tell you the way I looked at these. Could you go back 1 slide?
Sure. Please, dispute.
Maybe another slide, where you actually have the CPI for 6 years.
All right, the computer just froze on me.
We all have it in front of us.
Well, while you're thawing it out, okay.
There we go.
You can manipulate data any way you want to.
Absolutely.
But here's the way I looked at it. I said you got 6 years there. If I take the average of the earliest 3 years and the average of the latest 3 years and compare those two numbers,
It is significant.
the entire district
Yes.
is actually improving about 2.5% in ELA and about 9% in math. I don't consider 9% improvement for a system of over 3,000 kids to be insignificant.
I thank you, Mr. Sweat, because I keep everything back to 2004 when I came to the district, and I try to compare it to the programs and the training that we have provided. And it is absolutely significant, because if I went back to 2004, our aggregate CPI is in the 50s.
So I'm not suggesting that I'm anywhere near satisfied, but to say we're not making progress is simply false.
You're
Num-
right. We
number
are
one.
making progress. And the comment I made to one reporter and is part of our press release, I firmly believe that we are committed to continuous progress. And some years may be slower than we like, but as long as it is continuous improvement in student achievement, then we keep at it. And we know that that is our goal, is continuous improvement.
And let me highlight a couple other things and then I'll stop on this subject. In ELA, just to show how clear a trend this is, at the high school, the last 3 years are all higher.
Well, I haven't got to the high school slide, though, for the benefit of everyone else.
All right, I'll hold off. Go ahead.
But I'll definitely.
Okay, so my point on the district is, especially in math, 9% improvement over 6 years, doing the comparison of the 3-year groupings, which I think is the fairest way to smooth things out. I think it's significant. I'm not satisfied. I suspect nobody on this committee is satisfied, but we are making progress.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, here we go. I don't know if the computer is going to, all right.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Student growth percentile. This is a part of the formula on rankings. This is also new. It was first introduced in 2010. It is now part of the ranking system, and it is also part of the system that they use to give us academic grants. And so you can see that from 2010 to 2011, and this bears up and reinforces what you're saying, Mr. Sweat, and that is that our student growth percentile has improved significantly from 2010 to 2011. The drop from 2009 to 2010 is the first year of the formula, but we're back up. So as far as growth in achievement, we are definitely in the right direction. Beginning with the schools. Mine and Forest Elementary School, their AYP status in a 6-year comparison, as you can see, they are on steady progress for improving. They have no status under the federal NCLB in English Language Arts because they have shown improvement in both the aggregate and subgroups for the last 2 years. In mathematics, this is the first year in a row that they have shown improvement in both the aggregate and subgroups in mathematics, and they are still in needs improvement year 1 because they had a no for 2 years in a row. But they have shown significant improvement, and that improvement in ELA, as you can see, they have continuously improved their literacy scores, their student achievement across the board in both the aggregate and the subgroups. They have met their improvement target, and they're on their way to meeting the state target. In mathematics, it is even more dramatic. The aggregate has improved more than 6 points, and remember, this is a composite performance index, so that's greater than a percentage. And you can see in each of the subgroups there is significant improvement. You are going to see this also in the Deacon's School, and I'm going to jump ahead just a bit, even though I cautioned Mr. Sweat. And I want you to look at this in terms of what we do in the district. We not only analyze assessment results, but we observe and evaluate current instruction and curriculum programs. That continuous evaluation and observation led us to the conclusion 2 years ago that our elementary math program needed to be adjusted. It was not meeting the needs of our students, and instructionally, the teachers were not satisfied with what it was giving them. So last year, at the beginning of the 2010, September 2010, we introduced everyday mathematics in grades K through 5 with year-long professional development and support. That has directly affected our students' mathematics understanding to the point that it has led to changes this year in the mathematics program in the middle school. And as you can see, it has affected achievement results. We also had more expansive tutoring through our Title I SES program. Minot Forest Math, School and ELA and Math, School and State CPI. You can see that in English Language Arts Literacy, the light blue line is rising to meet the state CPI, and in mathematics we have surpassed it. Minot Forest percentage at proficiency or better is rising with 64% ELA and 60% mathematics. Do we want greater? Would we like 100% proficiency? Absolutely. But we are showing significant progress in math and continuous progress in ELA. And using Mr. Sweat's formula, the 4-year improvement is huge. Minot Forest is a level 1 school, and you can see the student growth percentile and the trends. Again, we have this huge rise this year in student growth percentile. I believe last year I did present on how student growth percentile was calculated. I'm not going to go into those calculations tonight, but if anyone has questions about how the state calculates student growth percentile, I'll be happy to break it down to 50 words or less.
Go ahead.
You said before that the 2009 to 2010, the big drop had to do because that was the first year of the formula. Can you just expand on that a little bit about?
What the formula is they compare student growth to peer cohorts. Those are not peers within our school district, but they are a randomly selected group of peers across the state. And how the state defines peers is not just by grade level. What they do is they take every student, for example, that scored, let's say, a 230 on either one of the MCAS assessments. A 230 is right in the middle of the needs improvement range. So this randomly selected group of some arbitrary size that scored 230 in 2009 on MCAS is put in a peer cohort. Then that randomly selected group of 230ers, if I can call them that, they look at their results in 2010. So if that randomly selected peer cohort of 230ers generally went up to a 240 and reached proficiency in a greater percentage than the cohort peer went down, that would show that the average student growth percentile should have been 10 points in performance scale. But if our students didn't increase by 10 points, they only increased by 8, then we'd have a negative student growth percentile. Then in 2010, they would take whatever the average SGP was for a new peer cohort and compare it to 2011. And I know it sounds like
There's all kinds of words going through my head right now. Because I'm looking at this and, you know, a couple things go through my mind right now. That's a huge dip and a huge increase.
Yes.
So am I going to see, when we're doing, you know, the 4-year comparison or the 5-year comparison, that it's going to look like this? Or is it...
I wouldn't even begin to predict, because this so-called peer cohort changes every year.
So that's why I just keep looking at this, because I saw it throughout the presentation, and why is this data useful to us whatsoever? And I would just ask that if we can't make sense out of it ourselves, like, how can we use this data here? I mean, I like the fact that it goes up, but besides that, it doesn't do anything for me.
I'll be very honest with you. When student growth percentiles first came out, the superintendent and Mr. Sweat and I heard a state presentation, and we asked about formulas and didn't get much of an answer. At the time, I was in my graduate program taking advanced research in statistics. So I brought it to this statistics guru, and I said, this is how they're calculating it. And I said, is this legitimate? Given he's from a university outside the state, I want to quote the objective opinion. He said, statistically, it is an absolutely valid system because they're using spans of significance, which is, I mean, I don't even want to try to go into this, but they use spans of significance, and that's how they determine SGP. He said, statistically, it is solid. In fact, it was devised by a statistician in Colorado. Realistically, when you try to take average percentiles, the margin of error is huge because you can't average a percentile. Mathematically, you can do the numbers, but realistically, it becomes so distorted that the margin of error is huge. We do not even know what the error is that's allowable in the state formula. They don't release that. However, what the statistician did say to me is that when student growth percentile is helpful is when you look at it at an individual student rate. Okay. So when the parents get their individual student reports and see the growth percentile for their child, that is more indicative.
That absolutely makes sense. I think from a school level or a district level, that's where I'm saying that it doesn't really make sense to present that piece of it. But I can understand it on an individual level. So thank you. I won't
okay,
hold
so
this
that,
anymore.
I mean, I hated to, but that's...
Thanks.
That's a statistician's interpretation.
Thanks for that information.
All right. Moving right along, and we're going to try to wake up this computer here. John W. Deacon School, their CPI comparison, as you can see, the English language arts literacy needs some work, and we are well aware of it and focusing on that through both new programs and additional training. In mathematics, as I mentioned, we introduced a new program, Everyday Math, provided year-long training, and we see improvement in both the aggregate and the subgroups. When we break it down ELA, the problem continues in the aggregate as well as in the subgroups as far as English language arts and literacy skills. And we are targeting that both through professional development and additional programmatic changes this year. And you'll be hearing more about that with our alignment to the Common Core and the introduction of, informational text. In mathematics, they, again, like Minor Forest, we see significant improvement in mathematic results and with the focused training and the new program.
Jan, quick question.
Sure.
I want to make sure that that comparing CPIs at different grade levels is something you haven't talked about, but I want to make sure that it's a legitimate comparison. If I see, for example, in the DECUS number that you just showed for math of, I guess it was 82.7, can I compare that to a high school number of 79.2?
Sort of.
That's not exactly the answer I had in mind. I'm into binary answers like yes or no.
If I took and we, now that we have the final results, I mean, as of yesterday, we had these results. I will ask Elise Katerius, who's my absolute technician in my office that understands assessment databases like no one else. I will ask her to take the high school 10th grade students using their student identification numbers and look at their scores in grades 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, based on CPI, and then look at that cohort in grade 10. Then we can compare it. To compare these results in DECUS to our current 10th graders in math in the high school is two completely different groups of students.
Of course, I understand it's a different cohort, but if you have a large enough cohort, it makes up for a whole lot of problems that you would otherwise have if you have a very small cohort.
Absolutely. And and you'll see, I have a chart in here of the aggregate across the grade levels.
Okay, because my point was, when we see a number that's higher in the elementary schools for a cohort of, I don't know how many hundred that corresponds.
About 250. Well, this is 3 grade. Well, that's the other problem. In the elementary schools, you're looking at 3 grade levels, which would be approximately 700 to 750 students in the elementary schools. At the high school, we're only looking at grade 10,
Right.
which could be about 200 students.
Still, you do not like to see the CPI drop.
Absolutely not.
No, which is my problem. But go ahead and continue.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, okay. The DECUS and state CPI comparison is, as you can see, literacy is our hugest gap. It's the area we need to put a lot of attention, and you'll be hearing more about that from me throughout the year. In mathematics, we have actually, just as we did at Minot, have surpassed the state CPI. The percentage proficiency or better, as you can see in ELA, we have our work cut out for us. In mathematics, we have our slow, steady growth, and it is significant growth.
What is significant growth?
Math is significant, absolutely. If, you know, I hate to say one program can make a difference because I don't believe in a silver bullet, but I do believe in the concentration of effort, a program that the teachers have ownership of, not one that was inherited by all of us, and the continuous training throughout the year. They really formed strong collaboration groups working on mathematics, and it made a difference. And we're looking to see the same thing happen in ELA literacy. This is the student growth percentile trends, and I'm just going to show it and keep moving. Okay? Wareham Middle School. Our middle school dropped in English language arts and in mathematics. We are looking at the number of reasons why, and I will amplify that as we go through. In English language arts, the overall drop was not significant. As you can see, the CPI comparison in the aggregate, there's actually a 0.4 of a point improvement, but it did not meet the improvement target. That's why middle school did not make AYP this year. You have to increase the you have to meet the improvement target. The subgroup showed a mixed results. Literacy, again, is our focus. And a big change under the Common Core is moving from narrative and fictional reading and writing to informational text, persuasive and expository writing. And this is going to take some time in programmatic changes and in teacher training, in bringing that into our students at levels that will improve achievement. Middle school mathematics. This is an issue that we, quite frankly, saw coming. We formed a vertical mathematics team early spring, late winter last year to look at our mathematics program and to start digging and drilling down to see what the issues were in mathematics program, instruction, and achievement at the middle school. We had a mathematics textbook series that was not aligned the way it should have been with the Common Core, and we had teachers who needed additional training. We began that in the spring. We also, at the teacher's request, decided to extend everyday mathematics into grade 6 this year because, quite frankly, the teachers in grade 6 said they're teaching 4th graders in everyday math what I was teaching in grade 6. We needed to raise expectations and raise rigor. That has been implemented. We also, through this vertical math team, looked at mathematics programs that were aligned with the Common Core, that raised expectations for students and would build on a foundation that was being laid by everyday math. We have adopted what is called UCSMP. It is the University of Chicago System for Mathematics, and that is an integrated math program called Transitions in grade 7 and Integrated Algebra in grade 8. The teachers began training last June. Training continued today, and the programs have been implemented at the middle school to address achievement needs for our students in mathematics. You want me to pause here?
I have to comment. I know it's routine for us to grimace and sigh and be concerned about the middle school, and there are reasons to be concerned because the absolute numbers are pretty low. But data sometimes tells a different story. And in this case, the middle school is the only school of the 4 that we judge, where the last 3 years for math and ELA are higher than the prior 3-year period. Every single year is higher. In other words, if you take the average of the 6 years, the last 3 years are all higher than the average for both ELA and in math. And in the case of math, it's rising at almost 15% if you compare the older 3-year period with the newer 3-year period. Do they have a long way to go? Yes. Are they making progress? The numbers say they're making progress. Ken?
That was an interesting point by Jeff. Is when I look at it, I said, since I've been on this committee, it's been level 3 or whatever the terminology was.
Restructuring before, yes.
For the middle school, and I'm saying, are they ever going to get out of this? There's no improvement over there. And then when you look at the numbers, as Jeff alluded to, I'm looking at it different now when I break it into 3 years and then the last 3 years. It really stands out. Is there a reason why it's a 6-year comparison? Is that just your choice? Because naturally, if you came with a presentation that showed the last 3 years, we'll think everything is beautiful when it really isn't.
3 years is the trend, is considered statistically a trend. The reason I've used 6 years since we've been here was basically to show the experience over 2 trend segments, if you will, because I do think it does say a picture. As Mr. Sweat has said, we went from 57.7 CPI to 69.2. That's a 12-point gain. That is a significant gain. It's an average over 6 years of 2 points per year. Unfortunately, our improvement targets go up much faster than that. So the only reason for using 6 years is to have 2 3-year trends to show that.
Isn't there another reason? If I remember correctly, didn't they change the methodology at some point, which made apples-to-apples comparison of CPIs invalid?
2003.
So anything from 2003 on is apples-to-apples?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
As much as we know it is.
Right. Are you all set, Ken?
So I was just trying to compare the 2 3-year trends, which you can't do with the state because this chart only has 4 years, correct?
In the state CPI?
Yeah.
You don't have a state CPI chart in here because they didn't release it.
So
We have the current CPI. Well, quite honestly, because I have the state CPI for all the previous years, if if they had released the state CPI in the preliminary results like they did 2 weeks ago, I would have it for you tonight. But between yesterday and today, I didn't have time to do all that digging. I will make the chart on the state CPI for you.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, in the slide from now, you have the chart that compares state to Wareham. So the reason why it's flat is because we don't have the numbers?
No, let me go to the next chart. Thank
Okay.
you, Rhonda. And I'm going to wake up the
One
computer
second.
again.
Cliff?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the 11 CPI, and I understand everything's been said around the table, and you know, and we have shown some growth, but, you know, there are definitely some subgroup trends there that are disturbing to me.
Yes.
And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. You know, you go from 51.3 to 46.1. That's significant, particularly in math and, well, you know, one of the subgroups. And so, I am concerned, and the thing that concerns me is, again, I'm delighted to see you going to an integrated system, but it's another math program. It's more training. It's more professional development. It's more time used to transfer to something different. And I'm not saying that something different isn't good, but you understand my concern on some of the subgroups, particularly in math.
The subgroups in math, you're absolutely right. The particular one you're referring to is the special education subgroup. And this, again, I have to register a warning because that is although it meets the subgroup requirement of the state of having more than 40 students over 2 years, as you know, if it's 41 students and there's a change of 2 students, maybe 2 new students came in with more significant disabilities, it shows a greater drop
And I hope that's
than
the
you would
reason.
see overall.
And I hope that's the reason, because that would, you know, like you say, 2 kids over 40 is a significant change.
Right.
And I hope that's the reason. But I'm still a little concerned, number one, with the gap between the math levels at the middle school and the state.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a huge gap, you know, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm happy with this because I'm not.
And I will quite honestly tell you, this is something that I have been bringing to the superintendent's attention. We've been discussing the need for a new math program at the middle school. The program that was introduced there, not quite honestly, without either of our approval, was not aligned, and it did not have the level of rigor or expectations that we wanted to have. We had to wait until we had enough grant funds to buy materials that were both aligned and that our teachers could be trained to move into. And this is what our vertical math team has requested. It is a rigorous program with high expectations and fully aligned.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. See, that's the variable that haunts me. That's the variable that haunts me. As not only a citizen, a taxpayer, but a member of the school committee. We had to wait to accumulate grant funds to buy the materials we needed.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the courtesy, Cliff, you're showing about going through the chair, but as far as I'm concerned, once you're given the floor, you've got the floor until you give it up.
I give it up.
Okay.
Now, if I may, Mr. Sweat, I want to go back to Mrs. Vugan's question about the state CPI. These are the accurate CPI figures for the state in this graph. They're not in a chart because, as I said, they were just released yesterday. So we had time, because this is a chart we've been keeping every year, we had time to throw them into the chart and give you an accurate graph.
All right. Because when looking at this, we see that the state trend is that there was no improvement at the state level. They stayed flat
Yes.
from last year to this year. I mean,
Correct.
my concern that I'm sure that, excuse me, through you, Mr. Chair, that I share with the rest of my committee members is just the drop in math. I mean,
Yes.
that's just shocking.
Yes. And I sincerely hope and I sincerely believe that you're going to see a change in direction with this chart next year in middle school mathematics.
We have to.
Absolutely have to. There's no gimme on this one.
And I appreciate looking at the last 3 years and all of that, but I mean, I think this committee absolutely needs to be focused on year-over-year progress. I mean, I can understand, but I look at, when I see something like this, I don't want to say fail our students, but what didn't we provide this past year that allowed this number to go down so significantly? What change happened?
Respectfully, given the fact that we're talking about a different cohort, I think it's a significant error to look at year over year. That's why I think the 3-year comparison is critical. I think we will do, and by the way, it goes both ways. I'm not convinced that the math program is the reason that we've had jumps, because that's one data point. If it continues to go up, or at least it's maintained in the 80s in the CPI in the 2 elementary schools, at that point I'll say, okay, we've got 2 data points, I'd like to see 3. But I just caution that we do not want to react to 1 year, 1 data point, in either with euphoria or with concern, because it can be reversed
Absolutely.
in the next year with a different cohort. You all set?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Where are we?
We're at middle school percentage proficiency or better. I had to wake up the computer again. And this is a little more indicative. When you look at the percentage of students who are at proficiency or better, there's no change in ELA. There's a slight change over 4 years, which is the range of data that we have from the state. In mathematics, there is a drop in the percentage who are proficient, but not significant. So I think that also tells us something. The one thing is, I do believe you need to take all of the data. Not only do you need to take a trend across 3 years, but you need to take a number of different data points to get a full picture. And when we start drilling down into this and going into item analysis, we get even a better picture of where the strengths and weaknesses are. So this is just one other piece of data. And our SGP trends for our middle school, which is our only level 3 school in the district. But if you look at SGP, we don't know why. Anyways, I'm just going to leave that as it is and move on.
Oh no, spend more time on it, please.
You don't know.
Again, not to beat a dead horse, but if you look at this thing in terms of numbers, all right, and just figuring roughly, let's say
Yes.
you got 800 students at the middle school.
About
Okay?
just over 600, but that's okay.
So you got just a little bit over 300 of those kids that are proficient or better.
Yes.
That's disturbing.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. I don't want to sugarcoat this at all. We know there are issues at the middle school. The superintendent and I are doing these concentrated walkthroughs. We're meeting with administration. I'm working with our instructional leader. It's going to take a team effort to raise expectations and raise rigor in instruction. Absolutely.
I have to ask myself, not only as an educator, but a member of the school committee, why such a tremendous variance in performance in English language arts and mathematics? When you've got over half of the school, well over half of the school scoring proficient or better in ELA.
Yes.
And you've got 300 plus kids scoring proficient or better in math, you have to ask yourself, what's happening? Because obviously, those same kids have the ability to achieve in English and language arts. So, you know, I'm not so sure that we've really isolated what the problem is. It might be the math program, but I'm not convinced it is. I'm convinced that those kids taking that math test should have the ability to do better than that. If they're scoring proficient or above in English and language arts, and the range of deviation is so huge between ELA and mathematics, you have to question, what are we doing in ELA or other subjects that we're not doing in mathematics, or vice versa?
I think a lot of it has to do with, a big piece of it, obviously, is expectations. A huge piece of it.
Excuse me, what did you just say?
I said a big piece of it is expectations.
Are you suggesting our expectations across the board are not high enough?
I think in mathematics at the middle school, they needed to be higher.
But
And
are
the
high enough
teachers would affirm that.
And they're high enough now?
We are moving in that direction, yes. And I
Go
think
ahead, Cliff.
the other piece of this is, if the program of instruction is not tightly aligned with the Common Core of standards on which the students are assessed, they're not prepared for that assessment.
Well, we've been doing a lot of alignment for a lot of years. So I'm not gonna accept that explanation.
Let me say two things. One is, as much as the data says we're improving, Cliff is pointing out that the absolute numbers are still way too low.
Yes.
And that's a whole different issue. So we may be improving, but we're still way too low. I had hoped that the principals would be here tonight, but they couldn't be, and I made the request too late, so it's my fault more than anybody else's. But I have arranged with Dr. Rabinovich at the next school committee meeting to have a workshop prior to the meeting where we will get to ask a lot of the questions that perhaps are better addressed to the principals than to Mrs. Rotella. So I'm not asking you to save necessarily any questions, but you will have an opportunity to ask some of the tough questions at the next school committee just prior. There'll be a workshop. So
6
plan
p.m.
on it.
Fair enough.
All set, Cliff?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jan.
Wareham Senior High School. AYP status for the 6-year comparison shows that the high school has met both their improvement and performance targets in English Language Arts, has not met improvement or performance targets in mathematics this year for the first time. The ELA comparison is there for you in CPI. As you can see, we are approaching the state performance target and well past the state actual CPI in English Language Arts. In mathematics, we saw a drop this year in the assessment results, both in the aggregate and in the subgroups.
That's an understatement.
Yes, it is.
You have any idea why it fell off a cliff?
I'm digging into it.
No.
Different cliff.
Fell off a cliff.
Oh.
I have some ideas, but I'm really not prepared. We are digging into this. I think there's a number of things I could tell you off the top of my head, but I'd rather
think
dig
it'd be
into
better
it
with
with
the
the data
No,
for you.
save it for the workshop. I don't want you to, throw things out there that you're not comfortable with.
Okay.
I have to, you finished with the high
Oh,
school?
I'm sorry. Did I go too fast?
No.
Oh, now it's really gone crazy.
I have to tell you that using the same methodology that I used for looking at the district as a whole and the individual schools, there is one school that for neither math nor ELA did they have that lovely trend of the last 3 years are all better than the first 3 years.
That's true.
And that's Minot Forest.
The last 3 years were not better than the first 3 years?
In neither ELA nor math did they have the last 3 years better than the first 3 years. In other words, it was a sawtooth result. May have been a slightly positive trend, but they always had at least 1 year dipping below the average for the entire 6-year period, even in the last 3 years. Am I making sense?
You are, but I would refute that.
Well, I'm looking at the numbers you gave me.
So am I. I'm looking at the latest results, the final results, not the preliminary.
Right, and the average for the 6-year period was 77.5. And yet just
ELA.
for math. And last year was 76.6, so that's below the average for the entire 6-year period. And the average for ELA for the 6-year period was 82.2, and 2 years ago it was 81.9.
All right, but wait a minute, you're taking the average over 6 years and then pulling 1 year out of the middle.
I'm saying I
If we
averaged...
took the average up to 2009,
You can question my methodology, I just want to make sure you understand it.
I understand your methodology, but I do question it.
Well, when I say question it, you can say you like a different methodology, but the math is the math, which is to say if I average the 6 years, I get a number. And what I'm saying is, in every school but Minot Forest, in and middle school this was true for both, but in neither math nor ELA did Minot Forest have that nice trend where the last 3 years were always higher than the average, which is what you'd love to see, because if you don't see that, you've just basically got sawtooth.
We have to discuss this privately, because Minot Forest went from 81.4 in '06 to 84.6 this year in ELA, and from 75.3 in '06 in math to 82.9.
Yeah, here's the problem. They also did 78 in 2008. So when you average those, that 6,
That's
7...
ELA. Yes, they had 1 year dip, but again, you've been saying all night you didn't want to take one data point.
Which is why I averaged that 78 into 2 other data points to get an average for that period of time.
Okay.
Let's not play statistical debate here. My point is, the one school I have a concern about, because their results are sawtooth, is in fact Minot Forest. Now, you may feel much more comfortable about that because of the math result, and I can't share that comfort because it's one data point. But go ahead and continue.
Okay, I will.
I'm the chair. I get to have the last word.
Yes, sir. I'm going to move up here. We're on middle school, and this thing is doing wonky stuff over here. I'm going to defer to Dr. Sylvia, who says, "Oh boy, technology."
Don't let it get in the way of a good presentation. No, this is good. You're doing fine.
Let's see.
Better than I could do.
I think we need to update the computer that we're using, to be quite
Ken?
honest with you.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm on the high school results.
Ken has a question.
No, I was just
Yes,
gonna say,
Ken.
Mr. Chairman,
Fung.
I like the idea of us going through this in the workshop, and I just think we're going through a lot right now that it might be a good idea to just push this aside and we can get into it with the principals. That's just a suggestion.
I'm happy to do that as long as you're reasonably concluded.
No,
You're not. Then
you haven't seen science.
Well, I've got some general questions.
go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go through this rather quickly. Here is ELA Math, School and State CPI at the high school, which does show those trends that we've talked about. Here is percentage proficiency, and again, it points out the issue in mathematics at the high school. SGP, we can talk about that, but we'll move right on. This is CPI by grade levels. Mr. Sweat, you had asked to see CPI by grade levels. And this is 2011 CPI, grades 3 through 10. And so you can see the steady improvement in English language arts, both in the state and in Wareham. The sawtooth effect that you have referred to in mathematics is true for the state and for Wareham. And that is across the grade levels. I think the significance here is that we see a drop in mathematics in the middle grades across the entire state. And although math improvement in grade 10 is not at the same level as the state, it is a great improvement over grade 8. And we can go through all kinds of theories and postulates why this may be true, but that is simply a snapshot of this year's CPI by grade levels.
Cliff?
Mr. Chair, I know it mimics the state, one of the things that strikes me here, and it does mimic the state on this, at least in, I guess it's Lisa's math. I can't tell because I'm not color coded here. Yeah, whatever.
Math is the broken.
But here's the one. I mean, you look at the slope in grades 4 and 5.
Yes.
Do you think specialization has anything to do with that?
I think specialization has made a difference, and that would have been the other factor I would add to the math program that has made a change at both mine and Deacon's.
Because that's a pretty healthy slope.
Yes, it is.
Just to be clear, you're talking teaming?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And it's grades 4 and 5, and that's what we're doing here, isn't it?
Well, you look at the changes.
Yeah, but that would have been grade 3 here, though, right?
Well, but it's the improvement from each grade level. It's hard to say because you're comparing different cohorts here.
I know that.
But when we look at CPI, I do think that you have to put the teaming in that added to the improvement in math.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you have that specialization.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rhonda?
Yeah.
I'm
Can you go
sorry, you
back?
want me to go back?
Yeah. So, just so I understand this correctly, the concern that I have was we're trending somewhat with the state, except in 6th grade. I mean, 6th grade is where we're seeing an increase in the state average or basically staying the same and we're dipping down.
And
So
this
is
is
that
why,
is that what I'm
yes.
seeing here?
Yes, and this is why we're examining we have been examining the program at the middle school, and this is why I said part of it is what is being taught and the need to raise expectations and raise rigor in the middle school.
Right, and I'm just saying that it's here, what it's showing is that it's in math and ELA.
Yes,
We were
it
just
is.
only talking about mathematics before. Here, it shows that 6th grade, we're falling behind in both.
Yes. Here is that average student growth percentile, grades 3 through 10. And again, you're averaging percentile, so it's not the most accurate of statistics. Whenever you do an average of anything, you don't have, you're blurring your data points. But it does give you an idea of growth in English language arts and where it's occurring and where we need to work on growth in mathematics. Science. These were just released yesterday to both schools and public at the same time. And the reason I want to underscore that is the state had made the pledge that districts would receive MCAS results in August to plan programmatically and scheduling-wise for students. They did give us preliminary results that were changed slightly, but preliminary results in August for math and ELA. We did not receive the science results until they were released to the public. Our science is showing some improvement in both the aggregate and in the subgroups, and I think this is a direct result in grade 5 to a greater focus on science and to the teaming, the specialization. Grade 5 is the first year that science is assessed for students, and by having those teams in grades 4 and 5, we have teachers who are becoming specialists in science. So this will continue, and that kind of training and focus will continue. In grade 8, we are continuing to work with our science teachers. We introduced some additional text and some additional hands-on methodology and resources last year, and we're hoping to build on that this year. A number of our middle school science teachers have also gone through additional training at the Museum of Science in Boston. So we're going to start to see some payoff in that.
Low numbers, but impressive trend.
Yes, exactly. And I firmly believe that to improve instruction, you need both the right program, you need the rigorous content, and you need the rigorous instruction. It's a marriage of the two. And then you have to be able to take your students from where they were to where they need to be. And in science, we're seeing that beginning to happen. We have some very enthusiastic middle school science teachers who are doing some outstanding work with hands-on experiments and getting the kids involved in local science projects. In grade 10, we have some concerns about science. We have made some changes in the science program at the high school. We have introduced a new course called Introductory Physics in grade 9, which is a hands-on science program applying math and introductory physics for our 9th graders. We have 2 teachers who are specializing in it and focusing on grade 9, which we hope will then bring results. Because remember, the science tests at the high school are subject specific, so the scores here include physics, introductory physics, chemistry, and biology. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here going on the various improvements and efforts that are being rolled out for this school year. We've talked about them a little bit. We'll talk about them more with the principals, but just to assure you, and I know Dr. Silver has pointed out, we're continuously aligning. Yes, we are, and we have a whole new alignment now called the Common Core. And the shift in ELA literacy is huge because it is a move to informational text, expository and persuasive writing, and a move away from fictional reading and narratives, starting in K. So the theory behind that is college and career readiness, as well as more closely related to the world as the students know it.
I'll accept, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'll accept that as a look forward, but I'm not going to accept it as a look back.
Okay. Absolutely. I look forward. So we continue. Again, to continue just very briefly and zip through this, our everyday math is continuing. It is aligned. We have teaming with subject specialization. We have common planning time across all grade levels for all teachers. And we are embedding professional development through our early release days and through programs during the school day. At the middle school, the efforts that are this year is a continuation of our K-8 scope and sequence and literacy ELA curriculum, which is a challenge because we are moving into that informational text with a focus on reading and writing in the content areas. Again, we have planned year-long professional development. Everyday math has moved into 6th grade, and the new UCSMP integrated transitions math and algebra in grades 7 and 8. Again, we are aligned with the Common Core, which is the national standard, to strive to fulfill our mission to educate all students for life's responsibilities, challenges, and opportunities. And that is the end of 52 slides.
Thank you.
Any general questions?
I have a couple.
Please.
I just have a couple general questions.
Sure.
General comments. One of the things that I think we need to point out, and I think that sometimes we don't put enough stock in this variable, is the fact that traditionally, looking at this longitudinally, these results, that our students have been underperforming consistently from one particular subgroup, and that's low income.
Which is our largest subgroup.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And,
It's actually a majority.
right. Low income brings with it a set of variables that are very hard to control.
Yeah.
You've got probably a high degree of single-parent households. You've got a high degree of obviously low income. You may have nutrition problems. There are all kinds of variables that go with, and I'm not saying it's a crime to be poor, because I came from poor parents. But along with being poor, there are a bunch of socioeconomic, social variables that you have to contend with and that you have to account for. And unfortunately, we've seen a growth in low-income housing in this town, a tremendous influx of low-income housing. And we have to understand that this is going to affect, to a certain degree, and I'm not saying that we can't adjust for these variables, because we can and we always try to, but it will. It's very difficult to account for all of the variables of low income. So all I'm saying is there is a growing trend for our students. I'm not saying a majority, but a lot more students coming into that low income subgroup. And that's the one that's been struggling all along. So I think that we have to look at that and look at ways in which we can, we can accommodate those variables and accommodate our system to deal with them. So that was one point that I wanted to make.
Can I just respond
Yes.
to that one point? We're well aware of that significantly high subgroup is low income. Across the district, we approach 60% free and reduced lunch, and sometimes surpass it at any given point in the school year. We have adopted, as of last year, under our superintendent, the strategies of Dr. Doug Reeves, who is a longtime researcher and educator, called the 90-90-90 rule. And this is based on 10 years, now 20 years of research in schools that were 90% low income, 90% minority, and 90% proficient or better.
Successful, that's right.
He did a follow-up study after 10 years that just came out in May, and over 90% of those 90-90-90 schools are now 100% low income, 100% minority, and 100% proficiency.
I'm so glad that you're saying that, because that was going to be my next point, but I'm glad you're doing it.
So we're implementing his 5 strategies. And his point is, and it's been borne out by other researchers in other areas, that any one is not a silver bullet. You have to have a clear and concentrated focus on curriculum. You have to do writing across the content areas, and that doesn't mean just practice writing. It means writing process with feedback and conferencing and corrections, and student writing conferences and corrections. You have to do collaborative scoring, where there are common assessments and teachers work together looking at student work, determining strengths and weaknesses, and then building, the 4th step, building instruction based on student needs. And then finally, you have to have your staff committed to high expectations and high achievement.
Failure is not an option.
Exactly. And that is his, as you know, his mantra. There should be no zeros, and there is no failure. If a child has a 0, then what else do we need to do as educators to have that student try again?
And the other, there's another thing, another point that I wanted to make, and I think that you probably, I've read it online, the 90-90-90 program, but there's also a really, really strong concentrated effort of making parents part of the solution, as opposed to blaming them as part of the problem.
Yes.
And I think it's very, very important that we work extra hard to make our parents, and it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, you love your children and you want the best for your children.
Right.
To make our parents, partners, truly partners in the education of our children. And I think that is, I personally believe that that's a missing component so far. That we need to do a better job of getting our parents involved, not just showing up for a school function, but truly getting them involved as partners in the education of their children. Here's the thing that I don't understand. This is my question. I asked before about some of the subgroups, like Native American being one of them. So I went through the thing, and I don't understand. The district has a subgroup, Native American, correct?
Yes.
But Minot doesn't?
Correct.
Deacon's doesn't?
Correct.
Middle school doesn't?
Correct.
High school doesn't?
Correct.
So if none of those don't, why do we?
Because of the numbers.
Because you
What
add
am I
them all,
missing?
because you add them all together to get to the critical mass. So
So,
you may
all right, so
have
to get to
10
so they're
in
all-
each
gotcha.
school.
I got you, gotcha. I said, this doesn't make any sense to me. Now I got it. Thank you very much.
It's all about the numbers.
Um,
I'll second.
thank you very much, yep. Oh, one more thing.
Sure.
One last thing. And I know I've said this before, and I said it publicly, and I'll say it again. I'm not happy with the high school science program. That
We're working
needs
on it.
eons of improvement. Eons. Thank you.
Kenny, anything, last questions? Rhonda?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else, I'll save some of the questions that I have for the next session. But from a state level,
Yes.
I think I've heard correctly that just state average, the trend isn't going up. The trend is either staying the same or going down. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What are you hearing based on these results, or have you heard anything based on those results yet that's coming down from the state of any changes that they're going to do, or that what is the chatter that's going on right now from a state level based on these MCAS results? I'll just do a general question like that.
The chatter, and I've been in a couple of meetings, regional meetings, with State Department of Education people present. The chatter is, one, the different way that the scores are being reported and released is indicative that the state knows there's a problem. They've changed what they do, or the way they report what they do. The other chatter is that they expect the alignment to Common Core to result in a dip before it shows improvement. Because the Common Core standards, and this may be another workshop, the Common Core standards have shifted not only content, but also pedagogy and teaching style, in that there is a more rigorous expectation for content at every grade level, and the pedagogy that is now demanded, that is aligned with that content, is going to require a lot of training and professional development support. So the state chatter is that they are going to provide, especially to level 3 districts, more grants to participate in their professional development training sessions. So they will give us grants for us to sign up for their professional development sessions to give them back the money.
And we will have more classes covered by substitute teachers as we send more people to this professional development.
Will the professional development, through you, Mr. Chair, will the professional development be a requirement of level 3 districts?
Yes. So what we, in fact, the superintendent and I were just talking today and have been talking that, you know, we may be the squeaky wheel demanding the professional development be held in our district in ways that meet our teachers' needs without impacting our students.
We cannot have our teachers out more.
I could not agree with you more.
Because then what you're basically doing is you're saying, well, let's do the development, but it's gonna be another year before you're seeing the results from that. I'm done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Jen, thank you for your very hard work and thorough
No.
report. We appreciate it, and I assume you'll attend the workshop as well when we have that.
And that will be on the 13th?
Whenever the next meeting is, it'll be the hour and a half before.
I will be there, absolutely. And hopefully
12th?
I'll have even more results
It's the
for you
12th.
then.
It's the 12th.
The
Our
12th.
person who keeps us aligned.
On the right calendar. It will be the
Yes.
12th. And just to let the school committee know, through the chair, if I may, on October 7th, we have an in-service day for our teachers, and it is our district data conference, when we will be bringing all of the teachers together across the district, beginning here in the morning at 8:15, with someone from the DSAC, from the state, looking at data. But then what we do is we break down in grade level groups across the district to literally pull apart item analysis and data and see what, examining strengths and weaknesses and what our next steps are. So you are invited.
That takes place in this room.
We
doesn't
begin
it?
here in the
Yes, that's
auditorium,
what I
yes.
thought. Okay.
October 7th starts at 8.
15. And that is where the teachers start really digging into this data. But thank you, and I appreciate your attention through this very long, detailed
but
presentation.
important subject.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I've got 9:51. I'd like a vote to do one more subject on the agenda, which is the superintendent's goals. That's undoubtedly going to take us a few minutes past 10. Could I have a motion to go beyond 10 to complete that agenda item?
And what about the
You need to
executive
go into
session?
executive session.
Because it's been posted.
Well,
I'm sorry. Oh,
you have
we have,
executive session as well.
good point.
You need to vote on.
Well, that's, yes, we've got 2 agenda items. Yes, okay. So I stand corrected with the number of items. Could I have a motion to go beyond 10 to conclude those 2 items?
So moved.
2 items, oh, excuse me, I'm confused. 2 items? Which
Well,
is that?
executive session would be one
Oh.
area to
So
conclude.
you're eliminating other business?
Yes, unless someone has some other business.
I do, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to bring up another item.
Okay, then I'll just generically say I'd like a motion to go beyond 10 o'clock to conclude the
Second.
business of the meeting. I have a
Well,
motion.
I'll make the motion to go beyond 10.
We had a motion. I'll take
Second.
yours as a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Thank you. Okay. With respect to the goals and objectives, I'd like to do it in the following way. I'd like to address each goal individually for questions, 1 round of questions or 2 rounds if the committee needs it. And then after we finish the questions, I'll accept suggestions about how the goals might be changed, amended, edited, etc. And then after we've concluded that process, then we need to go through a process of weighting the goals with respect to the actual evaluation. So the first thing I'd like to do is look at the community goal.
Community goal?
Community, thank you. Goal.
Goal number 3.
It's, I guess it's goal number 3. Does anybody have any questions about goal number 3?
Gotta find it. Well, the only thing that I put notes in here was the expansion of Power School to elementary progress reports. And I know that that's community, but it's also technology. I guess it's loosely connected to community. So that was the only thing I had on this. And the other thing is, who's going to China?
Me.
You are?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It will be reported after I have the conversation with the new chair.
Oh.
But thank you for bringing it up.
Oh.
Any other questions regarding community?
Yeah.
Rhonda?
Barry, when you and I spoke, one of the things that we talked about was communicating escalation points within the system, published on district website. That wasn't included.
I deleted that because it wasn't clear to me exactly what was meant by that statement.
Okay.
Anything else on community?
Yeah, 2 more.
Go ahead, Cliff.
I couldn't find it. It's probably in here. I probably overlooked it. I'm still thinking that the Ed Foundation is being underutilized. Is there anything in here about the Ed Foundation?
No, sir.
Okay, well, you can put it under resources too, but I still think that that's an untapped resource that we should be concentrating on. And the other thing was, that I mentioned last time, was developing programs, and I just mentioned it here tonight, for parents as equal partners in the education of their children. So.
If I may,
Please.
Mr. Chair, as
Yeah.
just as conversation point, in one of our earlier discussions, Dr. Sylvia, you had mentioned that if it had been a goal before, that it shouldn't be a goal again.
Okay.
And since the Educational Foundation had been a goal, which was the creating it,
Right,
which we have done.
right. Now, the
It
goal
is
is
its
to
own
utilize
entity.
it.
Well, we gave out grants last year, and
Well,
we've raised
I
money.
still think it's being underutilized. That's just my opinion.
I will invite you to the next meeting.
Anything else on community? Okay. Anybody want to recommend changes to community?
I'd like to add, what you're doing, I'd like to add and explain what I meant by the communicate escalation points. One of the things that came out of the meeting that we all attended with the PI group is that there was confusion in the district over if there was an issue, what was the right systems to go through, whether it's an issue or communication, whatever it is. So we discussed at that meeting, but I don't think that it's adequately communicated in the district of you first. So if you have an issue that you go to your teacher, you then go to the principal, you then go to whether it's the curriculum director, or student services, or finance, and then you...
So you mean the problem resolution?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that, it was the terminology, to be honest.
Escalation.
Of escalation that
That's fine.
completely had me befuddled.
Okay.
Actually, in our bullying program, we have a statement exactly where to go if you don't have satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
We have it in our harassment policy, and we have it in the district handbook, which has all the code of conduct and so forth, clearly states that at any point along the way, if a parent feels dissatisfied, that they go to the next highest level. So, you know, from the assistant principal to the principal. And those same things happen when people call our office with an issue. We ask, have you talked, let's say the issue is with a particular assistant principal, have you talked to the principal of that school? And if they haven't, they're referred back to that. If they have, then we make the appointment for them.
Okay.
So, so we have tried to do that, and particularly with some of the parents I think you were talking about that were new parents and hadn't been in the system before, perhaps it wasn't as clear to them, and if we need to do a better job with that, communicating it, absolutely.
So, and I'm glad to hear, and I knew that it was in bullying, I knew that it was in certain pieces, but I think it doesn't need to be in these goals, so I'm happy to hear that. But if we could take a look at, especially from our public website or where we're seeing parents go, being able to put a simple document together that talks about issue resolution generally, and really where you should start off, and then where the final point is, I think would be useful, because there is some confusion, I think, in the district of who do I go to if I'm not getting my issue resolved.
I was looking for the place because you helped put it in about being more visible on Facebook / other social media, and as well as the website.
Mm-hmm.
That so perhaps we can place that as something that can be searched as well as its own, either between student services as well as the superintendent's page on it, to clearly articulate this idea of going to the next level, that, if you're not satisfied, there is a path to follow.
Yep.
Which is productive.
Okay. Thank you. That takes care of it. It's not a change that
Fine.
needs to happen.
Okay. Resources.
Why are you going all over the place?
Excuse me?
It's like, why are you going all over the place?
For some reason, that's the order I had it in. Any questions or concerns about resources?
Who do you want to start with?
The only question or concern I have is, again, to repeat, I think the Ed Foundation should be listed somewhere on here, but I'm not going to push the issue.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I had a similar, through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes.
I had a similar comment when I provided my feedback of being able to have underneath resources a fundraising goal. I don't think it has to be specific to the Ed Foundation, but being able to, as a district, there are, all the PTAs are doing fundraising. I just went through my son's school budget of what their fundraising goals are. Each school, I think, through the PTAs at least, have a fundraising goal. Should we as a district have also a fundraising goal, what we're shooting for, that then can be communicated back out to the schools? We know that we need to try by every means to get additional funds into the system. We do have the ability to do fundraising. I think that as a district we should have fundraising goals, and I think that the Education Foundation could be part of that.
Kenny?
Just a comment on Rhonda's. Earlier today we talked about the increase in low income and everything, and are we asking students or the teachers or anything? I'm trying to follow.
From a community standpoint, the thing is that we do fundraising today. I think, the 80 Make piece, that the grants that we get from them. So we have grants and fundraising efforts going on. I think that we should communicate them in goals of what, as a district, we would like to achieve when it comes to getting additional funding into our schools through fundraising and grants.
I have to add are you finished, Ken? Feel free to go on.
Yeah, I just don't follow along. I'd like to see our efforts more on reaching out to the town and parents as to how we can go to town meeting and get money other than fundraising. I just don't think that's a place for I'm aggravated with fundraisers now that the kids come home with through the schools, and it's when does it stop? So.
I have to say I agree with Ken completely. When I think about the job of superintendent, the last thing I want the superintendent to be is fundraiser in chief. He's already our chief education officer. He's already the person who represents us with the town administrator to try to maximize the funds to the LEA and the transportation department. Furthermore, I think the number of dollars we're likely to get is still going to be a rounding error on our budget relative to, and therefore it's not going to have much of an impact. Does that mean that some nice little project might be worked through as a result of the Foundation for Wareham Education? Yes, but in terms of actually supporting the LEA, I guess I'm skeptical that it would actually, from a cost-benefit perspective, meaning cost would be Dr. Rabinovich's time. We already have a very critical person in our organization in the form of Jan Rotella, who spends her life writing grants. And frankly, given the presentation we just had with respect to educational results, yeah, I love to get the grant money, but in some ways it's less important to me than getting better educational results, which is also part of her mandate. So anyway, that's just one person's opinion. Any other questions on this goal? Okay. Anything that people would like to add, subtract, edit on this goal?
I'll stand behind that. I think that we should have a number figure that we're going after this year when it does come to grants.
Okay.
But I'm sure I'll be overruled on that.
Well,
but
you might be outvoted, but
outvoted. And again, let me just say, because I think that you made the point that we are already doing it today. So we are doing it, that Jan is out there writing grants.
True.
Should we, I'm trying to be more thoughtful on a yearly basis of what we're going after, and so all of a sudden we're not being reactive, or that we actually have a plan on what additional funding that we're going after. This whole entire goal is about securing resources. So, and we already go after grants, we already do fundraising efforts, so I would like us as a district to be more thoughtful, so then we are not all of a sudden, again, being reactive or being more annoyed by the kids that come home with the fundraising that's going on. So.
Well, just correct me if I'm wrong. We actually have a significant plan with respect to federal, state grants that are clearly educational grants that are there to be applied for, and even there's a risk because
we aggressively go after any federal and state grant that is available to us.
And even then, when we get it, it's like, do we incorporate this as a permanent part of our LEA operations with the risk that it might not be there the next year, or it might shrink by 5, 10, 15, 50%? And I'm differentiating between that, for which I think there is a plan, and private philanthropy, which is what the Wareham Foundation, Education Foundation, is all about. And there, I think it's quite limited. Now, you know a whole lot more about that than I do, but it still seems likely to be a rounding error on a $30 million budget.
Right. But I think that just like any nonprofit does, and I know that schools are different, but what any nonprofit does is that they set a goal, so then they can work towards something to count on. So meaning that if we decide that we're going to make a goal of raising $25,000 in fundraising, I'm using a low number, then that's the goal that we're going after, so then we can count on that. Right now, I think it's just, we get it, we don't, we lose it, we don't, but if we're thoughtful about a number that we have in mind that we think is achievable, and that we align all of the schools, their efforts behind it, then, again, I'll just use thoughtful one last time, then we're more thoughtful about our efforts about bringing additional resources into town instead of everybody just doing their own thing.
I respect the thoughtfulness and the eloquence of your remarks, but I don't sense a groundswell of support to add it to the goals.
I'll wear you all down.
Okay.
You're wearing me down, I'll tell you that.
Okay, moving right along. Let's try student achievement. Have I finally gotten to goal number 1?
Yeah, that's number 1. Is it A or B? Because we have student performance and student achievement.
It's student achievement non-RTI.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments, questions on this goal? Ken, did you say?
No, I said I'm all
Okay.
set on that.
Anything that people would like to add, subtract, edit on this goal?
This is the non-RTI, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. In the...
Is this thoughtful?
No, this
No?
is not thoughtful whatsoever. In the second piece around systematically rollout of tiered intervention model applying the critical elements, oh, this is non-RTI. I apologize.
We are talking about non-RTI now.
Okay. I was doing RTI.
That was RTI? Okay.
Yeah.
All set?
No, yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're good on student achievement. Student performance RTI.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Too late.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm kidding.
You and I talked about this, but I don't know if it's something if it's something that probably needs to wait until next year. I forgot our conversation on this, but when we talked about, are there other ways that we can measure progress reports, grades, portfolios, other assessment, and I know that you talked about the technology that's going to be implemented.
And I have it down under, let's see.
The first one, inform software implemented?
Yes.
All right, so then that will go into...
Yes, and when I believe Jeff mentioned earlier, and Bob confirmed, that November 30th there'll be a report out about that particular software, what it can do, and after that there'll be a report of data from that software. But we're in the implementation
Yeah,
phase.
and then maybe next year we can take a look at, based on those reports that we're getting.
We're hoping
what-
3 sets of data points.
And then what
yes.
goals we can put around that. All right, great, thank you.
No problem. And finally, technology.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
I'm
No.
sorry. Go
RTI.
go ahead.
Some of this, on the RTI, now, we've got a pilot going on right now, is that correct?
Only for, right now, we have grade 3 that has been trained and is now implementing. And we are training grade 2 and 4 currently, and they will start implementing in January. And then, at the end of the year, we'll be doing another cohort with grade kindergarten 1.
But some of these measures are already taking place, or would be already taking place, because you've got part of the program already functioning.
We will be assessing the ones that are rolled out, yes. And then we'll do it again when we have more groups doing it.
Cliff, you used a term, and I want to make sure, I didn't think this is not a pilot, this is a rollout.
Pilot's on
It's a
now.
rollout.
It's a
Well,
rollout.
it's a rollout.
Well, not this, but right now, last year there was a pilot of RTI. and-
I don't think so.
No,
Yeah.
no. We just did the training during this summer.
Isn't there a grade ready to go right now?
They are implementing now.
Right.
The only difference, I think,
Grade
is
three.
just a difference in semantics. There is, we're rolling this out in that there's 2 pieces. There is the professional development portion, and there's the actual service rollout for each of these cohorts.
Right.
So the first cohort were administrators and 3rd grade teachers. They had their training in June, and they're rolling out services currently.
Correct.
The
That's what I
2nd and
meant.
4th grade teachers are starting their training now. They'll
Right.
start their service
Okay,
rollout
I
in
understand.
and so forth. So it is a rollout in that by September of 2012, kindergarten through 6th grade teachers will be trained and all will be ready to roll out. One of those, 3rd grade, will have already had a full year of rollout at that point.
And the other thing is, there will be some kind of a tracking log
There are a
used
number of things that
to measure
I-
the success of it, is that correct? Because I didn't see that on here.
So there's 2 things to think about in terms of success, because in the rollout, it's the success of the rollout. How effectively are we rolling it out? How well are people applying things like progress monitoring and screening devices and so forth? That's one part. The second part is student achievement. It's much too early to measure student achievement as an outcome of the rollout.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is, this has to be referred. And so I'm saying, is there an instrument that you would use to track the referrals and to track, much like an ed plan?
To track referrals, absolutely.
And what the course of action would be, and would that be part of
You mean how many?
indicator?
You mean how many people are in like tier 2 or tier 3?
Yeah.
Cliff, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's one of them, and, you might want to specify, certain actions that may be germane or a common thread through them all. I don't know, but what I'm saying is there a tracking device? I didn't see one listed.
Pearson Inform is the tracking device that will talk about what instruction, tiered
All I'm
instruction-
saying is, I didn't see that as one of the indicators, or one, action indicators.
The
that
readiness
would be
checklist,
tracked.
right?
readiness checklist, and both of those checklists are to measure the rollout, the effectiveness of the rollout.
Okay.
And the essential components,
Okay.
integrity.
Thank you.
So one of them we gave to the administrators at this week's administrative team meeting as a check-in to see how the administrators feel this is going, and then I have grade level team meetings for 3rd grade teachers coming up in the next 2 weeks, where we'll be asking them the same questions.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
Rhonda, you had something on RTI?
Yeah, I think that Cliff just covered one of mine, was just around how the assessment is going to be shared. The other one, Dr. Rabinovich, the ad that I made that for the measure is that no increase in special need percentage.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't put in.
You're talking about the 85-15.
Yep, so 8515
Five.
assessment shared, which is, I think that's already taken care of. That's just in general, like, how is it going to be shared, but that's covered, that it will be shared. But then, one of the other additions that you and I talked about was that how are we going to measure whether RTI is effective, and that we talk about RTI is going to be effective because, you know, we're going to decrease the percentage of students that are special needs. And so one of the measures that I wanted to put into the goals was that there would not be an increase in special needs.
In special needs referrals.
In special needs referrals.
And I thought we had had the conversation that it would take 2 to 3 years to get a confidence level in the general population for them to accept our word that the students' needs were being dealt with through regular ed RTI versus taking door number 2, which is the special ed IEP.
No, and agreed, and that's the reason why we said that we weren't going to put an indicator that decreased, that this was only for...
So that it wouldn't increase.
It would, right, that it would, there was no increase is what I would want to see in the measure.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with showing that.
But my concern with that would only be if you're measuring a leveling of special education referrals based on the effects of RTI, you just need to remember that only one grade actually has a service rollout beginning in September. 2 more grades will have a rollout for the balance of this year. So my only concern with that would be you're looking at the effect of service rollout for, by the end of the year, 50% of the kids.
It may be better for next year than this year.
It would make sense to me that you're measuring the effectiveness of the program, how we put it together.
But you agree that it's a measure that we should strive for, maybe not in this year, but next year we would have either it's going to no increase or that we're actually going to shoot for a goal that we're going to decrease it next year.
It absolutely should be a measure of the effectiveness of an RTI program, of the response from the children. Yes.
But this year, because of the rollout, that let's just okay.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anything else on RTI? Okay. And finally, technology.
Well, that's my baby, I got a lot of questions.
So let me.
Rhonda?
All right.
Do you have them on your laptop?
Yeah, only accept them on your laptop.
That's all right, I didn't...
I'm sorry.
Hey, I didn't have to go searching, for stuff when the screen went black, I had it right here.
All right. I'll save my changes for the next one, but generally,
What does
I
that
had...
mean for the next one?
I mean, because then you
Oh,
asked
yes,
if there are
yes.
any additions or changes.
So questions.
So questions. The Power Schools goal,
Mm-hmm.
it's not in there. The one that talks about expand the use of Power Schools, add the ability to
Oh,
send
sorry.
attachments. So it...
We had it someplace else.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
'Cause
It's in community, I think.
it is in community.
Yeah,
And in
that's
fact,
exactly where it is.
that's where Cliff asked the question, did it belong better in technology? It says expansion of Power School Elementary
Yes, I knew
progress
I saw it
reports involves
Hold on.
community number, the first
Yeah,
page.
because I do think that there is a
Under action.
community, a community goal that has to do with Power Schools, but then there is also a goal that has to do with upgrading the technology of Power Schools. So there is about expanding Power Schools to the community,
Mhm.
okay? But then there is goals around the actual technology of how it needs to, that we need to improve it. So the goal that was in technology that you and I discussed, so expand the use of Power Schools, so add the ability to send attachments. I don't know if that is so much a community goal as it is a technology goal, that we should have a goal that Power Schools, we should add the ability to send attachments through Power Schools because it's something that's being, go ahead.
If I recall the thread of conversation between your comments and Terry DiFilippo's comments on it, that Global Connect has the ability to send attachments. So it's a matter of using the right tool to send it, and PowerSchool does not at this time, and we can't make it do it. The company has to. They, we're on PowerSchool 7 right now. I'm sure next summer we'll be doing an upgrade to PowerSchool 8.
Okay.
So when the company sees that there is a need from across the country for that particular thing, then they will put it in. It's not to say that we won't ask them to do it, but we don't have control over that. Pearson has control over that.
All right,
But
so-
we can send attachments out through Global Connect, because that allows us to put the those email addresses
Right.
that we collect in PowerSchool into Global Connect.
Okay, but I know that there is functionality in there today that is the calendar feature, and we're not.
In PowerSchool?
Yes, and we're not utilizing that today, and I've heard from Terry that she would like to see that used more.
Yeah, if the technology committee or department, so to speak, there are 4 people in that department, 2 techs, 1 coordinator, and a secretary. Anna meets with them on a regular basis to talk about what they feel they can do. At this particular point, what I'm getting is a sense of that they're overwhelmed with what they're trying to implement, and that they don't have enough people to keep up with what they're doing. So during budget discussions, I'll be coming forward looking to expand some people so we can have better service out in the buildings.
Good luck.
Okay, except that this, to me, this goal around utilizing the calendar, keeping it updated, this to me is it's a district level goal that then filters down to the schools. This isn't a technology. This
Right.
and
It's not a PowerSchool thing, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. It is it's our web page, and it, I believe, is Google Calendar that we use on there. And yes, there have been some issues about people not putting accurate information, and we are working on that. That's been part of the conversation at the administrative table.
Okay.
So, is that in a goal here already? If you want to make that a goal, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, I'll resend. I don't know what the best format, but it's in the one that I originally sent you. If you just deleted off the first one, then
I kind of deleted and added. I mean, I added the things that I was.
Okay.
the next section I can add.
Okay.
Okay. So, for the benefit of the 3 other committee members here, what exactly are you adding to the goal?
Other people have comments, I can add it during the adding section.
Okay.
Okay.
Kenny, Cliff? Okay, we're now in the adding section. What would you like to add?
I thought Cliff had a whole bunch of comments.
I think he was being facetious, yes.
All right. So, in the technology goal, expand so the indicator is...
Michelle, read it slowly, please.
Expand, so the indicator.
Yep. So the indicator is expand the use of power schools.
Oh, wait a minute. You're saying the indicator is, I'm typing
That's okay.
indicator.
Yep, expand the
Okay.
use of power schools. The action is all schools to utilize calendar feature, and please feel free to wordsmith this. All schools to utilize calendar feature and keep items/events updated.
I'm sorry, I have to.
That's okay.
We don't use PowerSchool for our calendar.
Yeah.
We use Google Calendar as part of our website. So, saying that we're going to do it in PowerSchool is not correct.
Okay, but I'm sorry, but isn't there a calendar feature in Power Schools?
No, we do not use it. There is a calendar that sets when your grades close and so forth. That's the calendar, the school calendar.
All right.
It is the web page is where we would keep the events and so forth. That's the one that has to be kept up, so when parents go to it, they get the right information.
Okay. Delete it.
Okay, now what I'd like is, we've got 5 goals. I would like a motion from a member of the committee to weight these 5 goals so that the number adds up to 60.
60 points?
60 points. Can be anything you like, and then, of course, other committee members will react. Cliff?
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion?
Please.
As a superintendent, does he have a feeling on this?
Well,
Would that be appropriate to ask? Not that we gotta do it.
No, I think this is a fairly unilateral decision. He gets to accept, we get to negotiate the goals,
Okay.
but I think the weighting is up to us.
All right.
Do you disagree, Barry?
I'd have to read that contract item. I do believe, since it is contractual, that it is a negotiation, but
I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. Let's go through the process, and if you have a problem with the end result, you can let us know.
to Cliff's question,
Yes.
if I may, I looked at this as 4 goals rather than 5. There are, yes, I separated it out in A and B because I got input from 2 different directions, but both are around student performance.
Fine.
So I looked at it as 4. As I did in last year's when we had the conversation, I do feel that the items the action items under student performance are very important. So, if we were looking to weight, and I'm not going to say a number at this particular
Right.
point, but I feel that should be the heaviest.
Well, the heaviest meaning, are we down to 4 in your mind?
Yes, we're down to 4, so that out of 60 points,
The combined RTI student achievement
Right.
should be the heaviest.
yes.
Okay.
And then, in my mind, comes community, and then resources and technology. Though, as we've said before, the technology allows us to do some of the other things. But, so, I kind of see it in that realm.
Okay.
Maybe resources, but we need the community support to get the resources. So that's why I see community as second, and then resources, and then technology.
The only thing I would say on resources is, in some ways, you have least control over that.
Correct.
And therefore,
So that's why I
It's-
weighted
it should be-
resources
it should be
and
weighted relatively
technology
low.
So we have,
the same.
do we have 5 goals?
Well, that's
No, I'm
what,
saying 4. There's 4 that was on our
One is
strategic
student
plan.
achievement.
but combined RTI and student achievement is what
Okay,
Barry's
fine, but
saying.
where's resources?
That's number 4. That's that last
Well, then
pages.
what's community?
Community's
Three.
number
Oh,
3.
resources, I got it. I got
Student
it.
achievement,
Okay.
technology,
I got it,
community,
I
and
got it,
resources.
I got it.
Okay, so I'll take a motion when anybody is ready.
I'm ready.
Go.
Student achievement 25, tech is,
What? I'm sorry.
it's equals 60, correct?
Correct. 25.
Student achievement 25, technology 10,
Yep.
community 20, resources 5.
Okay. I'll repeat that for student achievement 25, community 20, technology 10, resources 5. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Second for discussion. Okay. Anybody like to comment on that?
Can you go through that a little slower, please?
Sure. 25 for student achievement,
Okay.
20 for community resources, 10 for technology, 5 for resources.
Yeah, don't call this community
Sorry, not
resource.
community resources, just community partnerships, I guess.
What are the numbers again? 25, 15?
25, 20,
Oh,
10,
20.
10, 5.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we're discussing that. Yes.
I'm fine. I had student achievement 25, so we started off on the right. And I had community and technology 15, 15, and resources 5. So I'm comfortable with what Rhonda is proposing, because resources, that's something that you really can't control. So I'm comfortable with the proposal that's on the table, Mr. Chair.
Well, you
Okay.
can't, well, I think you can. I think resources can be controlled to a certain degree. I think we gotta work hard in terms of community. being politically active, looking at certain aspects that we have to bring forward to town meeting. We have to look at overrides. We have to look at a lot of things. So I think that they can be measured. So I don't have a problem with what Rhonda has proposed. I had 25 student achievement. I had 15 for community. I had 10 for tech and 10 for resources.
Pretty darn close.
Yeah.
You want to leave
I
it?
just think 5 for resources. I just don't think that's, I think that might be a little bit too low, but I wouldn't stand opposed to that. If the committee wants to go with these numbers, that's fine with me.
She's going to get a swelled head if we let her get away with this first go round.
10.
I'm comfortable with.
I think,
25, 10, 15, and 10.
Okay. I actually had slightly different numbers, but I'm also, in all candor, comfortable with the 25, 20, 10, 5. Barry, what do you think?
I am comfortable with that.
Shall we run with it? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? You got that, Michelle? Okay, great. Okay, any other business? Kenny, you said you had something.
Do I? First of all, Mr. Chair, with your permission, after I make a couple of comments, I do have an email from a colleague, Rachel, on the same subject. It's just a couple of paragraphs. I'd like to read that with your permission.
Please.
Okay. Any other business? This is a thorn on my side. I sent an email out that I'm very, very upset with the lack of the enforcement of the dress code policy in our schools. It's absolutely disgusting. I saw a student get off the bus today, which I would say is a middle school student.
Are we sure, though, that it was a middle school
Oh,
student?
yes.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to tell you how I know it's a middle school student because of protection of the student.
I'll take your word.
The student had a skirt on that, if I had a measuring tape, was probably 8 inches above the knee, very tight fitted, a half blouse with the undergarment showing, and this committee really, I'm not speaking for anybody else on this committee, at least me, was really, really hard on the dress code. It's that it starts, that's an important thing. I think part of the issue, maybe it's not enforced, is because some of the teachers, still don't follow the procedure for the dress code. I did hear comments that the principal at the high school, Mr. Palladino, has on multiple occasions addressed some issues, but I'm not sure it's being done at the middle school. I hope maybe the parent is out there knows who I'm talking about. I cannot believe that someone would allow their daughter or son or anybody to go to school looking like that. So I'm upset that this committee, all we do is hire the superintendent and set policy, but we're setting policy that no one's giving a rat's behind about because they're not enforcing it. They haven't done it in the past, and I hold this starts with the top of the house. This starts with the superintendent, and it has to be drilled down to the principals that they need to focus on this dress code. I do not want to hear principals tell me that that's not a priority, they're not busy. They're too busy doing other things. I'm very, very passionate about this and upset that it's just, to me, a slap in the face to the school committee. Yeah, you set the dress code, but I have other things to worry about. Maybe the way I'm saying it, they don't like it, but I'm going to drop in some of these schools, and we don't need an invitation. And if I have to point it out to the principals, I will. But I hope the message gets sent to these principals, and I'm not saying all of them because I don't think it's an issue at the elementary level. It's the middle school and the high school. I can't speak for the co-op, but I have heard from students that attend both schools that want to talk about other students, and the comment that some of the students made to me is, oh, it's funny, they don't enforce it. You should see how so-and-so dresses every day. It's absolutely ridiculous, and hopefully, Mr. Chair, maybe these principals can come in and talk to the school committee, but I would hope that the superintendent can respond to this, that I'm not happy with it. I was gonna read Rachel's email, but my phone is dying out, but almost some of her points were that when she dropped her kids off to school, she witnessed a lot of violations as to what our outline of the dress code is. And I would like to hear from the superintendent, how are we gonna get across to the principals that this is enforced? And it has to start with the teachers right down to the students. Thank you.
Barry, you want to respond?
Yes, I have had a phone call from the union president who wants to meet with me to discuss, because one of our principals has put their foot down about the dress, and they want to discuss it because they're not happy that we have outlined what business casual is, and in fact put it up in the staff room. So, you know, we are following it. And as in any
That's for the
policy,
staff.
that's for the staff. And for middle school and high school, you know, I will meet with both. We have a walkthrough set up for the middle school next week. That will be one of my agenda items with the principal. And I have to tell you, when I walked through the high school with Mrs. Rotella, I did not see a violation, what I would consider, of the dress code from staff or students. And, you know, maybe it was the classes that I went in. We were in science classes, and I'm not saying that, you know, somebody wasn't in class that was inappropriately dressed, but I didn't witness it. And if I had, I would have spoken to the principal about it. So I will speak to both of them and let them know the wishes of the committee.
Cliff?
We've been talking about this forever. We put in a policy, and we put the policy in. We are the policymakers, you know? And when we put in a policy, we're not asking them whether they approve it. We're not asking them whether they're gonna arbitrarily enforce it. The policy is the policy. If we need to change a policy, we'll change it. But until it gets changed, that's the policy. And it's up to our administrators to make sure that the policy is adhered to. I was on Main Street last week. A girl walked down the sidewalk, very obviously a student, and I'm going to tell you what she had on her hips. She had a scarf. Her skirt was no wider than a scarf. Don't tell me for 1 minute that that's acceptable dress in any setting. And as far as the union's concerned, the union ought to be a little bit more concerned about student achievement than the dress of their teachers. Because you know what? If you have a cavalier attitude when it comes to professional dress, then maybe you have a cavalier attitude when it comes to student achievement. We have a policy. Let's make damn sure that it's enforced.
Rhonda?
I'm all set, thank you.
Well,
I'm sick of talking about it.
well said. I have a suggestion, which maybe not this meeting, maybe at a future meeting, that one of the things we might want to consider with respect to students, because I'm actually of the opinion that, especially because the union president is concerned about the fact that we're starting to enforce it, that maybe we're making headway on the staff. One of the things we may want to consider is, because Cliff is 100% right, we keep talking about this, we may want to say, okay, if the policy is not enforced this year and we don't get a comfort level by the end of this year, we'll simply change the policy and put in uniforms.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
I would do that in a heartbeat, and you know what? I think there are a lot of parents who would say, amen, because it would make their lives a whole lot simpler. So I think we've got the rest of the school year for the administration to prove that they can enforce a policy that we all feel very strongly about.
It's not arbitrary, that's the policy.
Right, I understand. Your point was well taken, Cliff. But I don't want to, in the heat of the moment, shall we say, I don't think we need the motion today.
No.
But I think it's an alternative that we can consider as the year progresses. And I'll be happy to hear that motion when the time comes if someone wants to make it. Anything else on this issue?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that they all report to the superintendent. He's not there to babysit these principals. And that's my point. The superintendent can't walk through every single school. These principals need to enforce the policy, and they need to make sure that the teachers are doing it. And that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm not here taking shots at the superintendent, but it starts from the top of the house, and it's up to our superintendent to make sure that the rank and file follows the policies and procedures that this committee put in place.
I will say that last spring, I made an observation and a complaint at the high school. And the response I got back was, yeah, and guess what? We'd already dealt with 3 others that same afternoon. So it does sound like it's a bit of a big problem that they have to balance trying to enforce a policy with the fact that they don't want to lose learning time and send kids home, because that's the result. They're out of school for X period, X a day or a half a day or whatever. Rhonda?
A suggestion, because we do bring this up every single year. Is there any type of special? I know it's in the handbook, but should we ask for a communication just around this be sent out? I know that it was addressed in the letters that we read at the middle school and the high school, that the dress policy, but you know, a note home to the parents describing appropriate dress at the school. It's just a suggestion.
I believe it's very clear in the handbook
Okay.
of what it says. So enforcement, it will be enforced, and we'll see where it goes.
Any other business before we go into executive session?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
The superintendent's goals, where will they be published after they're finalized?
On the web.
Thank you.
And Michelle, would you send a final copy to everybody so we all have the final version?
Or perhaps just the URL.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine. Okay. Any other business? Okay, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Well,
It's a roll
for what
call.
reason?
It's a roll call.
What reason?
Thank you, Cliff. For
The bargaining?
the bargaining,
Litigation.
approval of minutes and litigation. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. I had a motion, I now need a roll call.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Yes. We are now in executive session.
Mr. Luzon,
Will we
would you
reduce the
mind
meeting for a vote?
staying for that
And thank you.
one item that
We-
I've given them all?
We will be
We'll make it
reconvening
quick.
to take a vote. Thank you, Cliff.
I've asked Bob to stay for the letter that